with great speakers who will be talking on the topic at hand, which is the state of human rights and election preparedness for Zimbabwe 2023. On our panelists, we have Ms. Comfort Londo, we have our MP, Honorable Amos Chibaya, and we have Honorable Daniel Molokele, and we have our renowned journalist Hopewell, and we have Pastor Ivan Mawalele, who's also we've also known for a long time. He's a friend of Zimbabwe and continues to work and does work with RDI. So without further ado, I don't want to keep you waiting. We'll start, and Dr. Lulo will start the moderation.
Thank you. We thought we would make a progression of this whole thing and start right away, because the topic is human rights and we also, and you have to excuse me sometimes once in a while I forget these things, we usually start our meetings with a vote of prayer and thanks, and the person that's doing the prayer is the first, the lady is here. Could you please, you'll have to excuse me, your name? Mori Guerrero will give us a prayer.
Thank you. Praise the Lord. The Bible says in Isaiah 41, verse 20, in the New International Version, it says, "Bring your case, says the Lord. Bring forth your arguments, says the Lord, God of Jacob." And we just want to bring before the Lord God the arguments for our nation, Zimbabwe. The Bible says God, He plants leaders, but He also uproots them. He says that to the children of Israel, He said that you will say to your children, God took us out to bring us into the land of promise. And to the children of Israel, to the children of Zimbabwe, He took us out to bring us into an inheritance. We haven't yet received the inheritance that God has given to us. And we are saying, God, you are the same yesterday, today, and forever. And you are still the same. And we, the children of Zimbabwe, are. You didn't bring us out to walk in poverty, to be disorientated. You brought us out to bring us into something better. And we also want to pray for the mighty army that God has raised for the nation of Zimbabwe. I thank you, people. You are on the forefront. The forefront is not a place where people want to be, but we have these people who are at the forefront, and they're still going strong. And we are saying that no weapon that is formed against them, they will throw the weapons, but they will not prosper. Because these people, they are marvelously helped of the Lord. God has raised an army for this war that we have to fight. The people that are ruling have to be uprooted, and we need to bring people. The Bible says, when the righteous are in power, the people will rejoice. So we want to pray and decree and declare. He has made us kings and priests unto Himself. So we are going to decree. And the King Charles Wakaba, which were king, he decrees. He says what he wants. And this is what we are in the realm of the Spirit. God sees us as kings. And it is time that we stand up and decree the Zimbabwe that we want. I'll ask all of you to just stand up and we come together in prayer. Father, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you. Each one of us, let us pray. We thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for bringing us together. Father, we thank you for the nation of Zimbabwe. And we know, Heavenly Father, that the set time for Zimbabwe is now. The set time for change in Zimbabwe is now. We know, Father, you have said in your word, you appoint leaders and you also uproot them. And we are saying, Father, it is time to uproot the wickedness that is in Zimbabwe. The land of Zimbabwe is flowing with milk and honey, but the people are not rejoicing because the righteous are not in power. We know, Heavenly Father, that you have set up an army, you have set up a new leadership for the new Zimbabwe. And we pray, Father, that as we come to the elections in 2023, there are elections that will be led by you. We are coming as we bring the petition to the United Nations. We are bringing it to you first. We are bringing that petition for free and fair elections to you. We are bringing that petition for justice in Zimbabwe. We pray for those that have been incarcerated, that have been put in prison for no reason. We pray for the nation of Zimbabwe. We know, Father, that you will bring justice. You will bring new things. This is the hope for Zimbabwe. This is the time for Zimbabwe. The time to favor Zimbabwe is now. The time to bring Zimbabwe is now. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for those people that you have put at the forefront of the war. We continue to pray for them. We continue to speak divine protection. They are protected from the winds of evil and destruction. They are protected from the weapons of no weapon that is formed against them thou shalt prosper. They will throw the weapons. They will give poison, but they will not prosper because Father, you have raised an army. They are marvelously out of you. They are marvelously out of you. We thank you for your wisdom that is at work as they set up strategies, Father. We thank you for your wisdom. We thank you for your grace that protects them, for your grace that gives them advantage even over the adversary. Father, we thank you. We thank you in the name of Jesus. Thank you. Let us just continue to pray as we pray for the nation of Zimbabwe. Like when Jehoshaphat prayed and he set people to pray, God sent ambushes. Ambushes will be sent. Confusion will be set in the enemy camp. Let us continue to pray.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that inspiring message. Again, human rights and democracy and prospects for free and fair elections in Zimbabwe. That is the context of what we're talking about today. First, we'll just hear the current situation from one of the members of parliament who will tell us what's there in terms of what's going on in human rights and democracy, and what prospects do we have for free and fair elections. He will give us that context. But when he's done with that, we will be hearing from people about the real situation that's been happening in that country over the years, and why we have reached where we have reached in terms of the situation being what it is. And I'll be introducing the speakers as they come in, but right now it's the Honorable Molokele. He's an MP, he's the interim organizing secretary for the Citizens Coalition for Change, and he will give us a talk on, and I want to read it directly. It is sir, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. When my sister was praying, I remember the day when we went to Ruton Lokot, when your brother even was in court. You appeared before Chikobi, is that so?
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the presence of my sister, Unga. Is that correct? And my brother, Hon Molokele, my good brother, Hopewell, and also my brother, my leader, my champion, Hon Molokele. And I want to acknowledge also the presence of all our colleagues who live here in America. Ahoy, Zimbabwe, ahoy. Ahoy. Thank you very much. You know, I've used the slogan, but today it's a workshop. Therefore, there is no slogan here. I will reserve it for another day. I also want to acknowledge the presence of my sister, Unga, Dr. Molokele. Dr. Molokele wanted to read out my topic, and I'm sure it got missed. I'll do it for him.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm going to present on this topic an overview of Zimbabwe, a pre-election environment, and the prospects for a free and fair elections. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much. Which means my presentation is going to be in two parts. The first one is the environment, the current environment conducive to free and fair elections. And I'll say no. I'll give the reason why I'm saying the environment is not free and fair to have a free election come 2023 next year. I want to say that Zimbabwe has been under authoritarian rule since attaining independence in April 1980. Why do I say so? The Zambian government used draconian laws to close the democratic space. We used to have in Posa during the late Mugabe era, now called MOPA, right? And also AIPA. All these laws are used to close the democratic space. All these laws are used to thwart the constitutional freedom. For example, the right to demonstrate, the right to assemble, the right for freedom of expression. Right now, our brother, Honorable Scala, Honorable Stole, and also the 15, we are 15 victims, they're in prison for no reason. If you ask yourself what crime they've committed, nothing. People who are supposed to be in prison as I speak today, it's actually Zambia itself. Why? They attacked people who were mourning our late champion. Who? Mobilization. I want to see if you are together. Right? If you want to have a political gathering, you need to notify the police. The police itself, before they clear you, they need to get clearance from Zambia. You see how it goes, right? If you want to demonstrate, you also need to notify the police. The police, again, need to get clearance from Zambia. Obviously, it's difficult. I started these draconian laws so that at least you can see how the situation is back home. Right? What we witnessed recently, I'm sure you know last year when our champion chief, the president in waiting of the new great Zimbabwe, we moved right around the country, my brother Maori, in the rural areas. And wherever we go, we'll be attacked. Some of you remember the Mashingo incident, where our president was attacked. Go to Manicaland, his vehicle was shot. Right? Recently went to Zumba. You know this, my brother Molokele. After visiting our supporters, all our supporters were beaten by ZANU-PF. We go to Weza the same week. All the roads were blocked. Right? And the question is, if you are saying, have the no social meters but no following, why are you blocking him from meeting his supporters? The recent incident of Hopewell, you all see what happened in Hopewell. 2 days before the elections, on the 25th of August, more than 20 people were attacked. Some were bent. It's unfortunate that I was supposed to show you that, but we don't have the budget to support that. Over 20 people were attacked. According to the law, if you notify the police that you are given the permission to proceed with your gathering, no partner is allowed to interfere. On the 25th of August, at the very day that we have our own gathering, ZANU-PF disrupted our rally. I'm simply explaining to you the current situation. So, as far as that question is concerned regarding the environment, I can simply say that the environment is not conducive for free in the fair election. Let me now go further to say, what are the prospects for a free and fair election? Right? We have to fight for reform. And as a party, we've got 7 key reforms that I'm going to read out to you. Number 1, the right to vote. When we participated or when we went to war, it was one of the reasons, one vote, altogether. Meaning to say that voting is not a privilege, but it's a right. The Zimbabwean citizens have got the right to vote, whether you're in Zimbabwe, whether you're in America, whether you're in Texas, whether you are in North Dakota. Meaning to say, even if you're in the diaspora, the fact that you are a Zimbabwean citizen, you deserve the right to vote, wherever you are. It is the responsibility of the government to make sure that they put everything in place for all Zimbabweans to vote. Number 2, credibility of the voters' roll. All the political parties that are going to participate in 2023, they must have access to the voters' roll, agree and sign before the election date. Why? This is so to make sure that on the election day, nobody is turned away. I'll give you an example, my brothers and sisters. When I was recalled undemocratically, you know who called me. I participated again on the 26th of March and won, obviously, resoundingly. The people who registered before the proclamation, according to the law, their names were supposed to appear in the voters' roll. Right? But on the 26th of March, my brother Chumon, their names were not in the voters' roll. So that's why I'm saying all the parties who are going to participate come 2023 elections, they must have access to the voters' roll, agree, and also sign for it. Right? Real-time and credible results management and transmission system. I'll give you an example of what happened in 2008. It took almost a month, 2 months before the results were released. 2 months. What was this to do? Just counting. Yeah? Elections are done at the polling station. where people vote, they just count, the results are posted outside the polling station. And then those results took a month, 2 months before they are known to the citizens. Right? The integrity of ZEC personnel process and polling materials. You are all aware that the current structure of ZEC as it exists now is made up of former CIOs, former army officers, and some of them, their relatives are high-ranking officials of ZANU-PF, the Manganas of this world, the Muat of this world. So you can see that it's like a ZANU-PF ZEC machinery. We talk of autonomous, we talk of independence of ZEC. You can't say ZEC is independent when the board itself is made up of such caliber of people. Right? On the polling material, on the polling, what we are referring to here, we are referring to the ballot boxes, we are referring to the ballot papers itself. All the parties that contest election in 2023, they must know where the ballot papers are printed. Right? And also the security of these ballot papers to avoid contestation. If the elections are free and fair, and if you know that Dr. Molokele, you are going to win the election, why are you fearing buyer to have access to those ballot papers? Why are you fearing our citizen president to have access to those ballot papers? Number 5, media access. Right? During election period, or even before, all the political parties, they must have access to national television. Right now, ZBC is like it's a ZANU-PF broadcast corporation. It's not a national television. What we always see on television is ZANU-PF programs. What we see, my brother Mawari, what we see, my brother Molokele, what we see, my brother Hopewell. If it is a national television, it's not owned by a political party. So we want to see our champion chief, our president in waiting of the new great Zimbabwe, Advocacy, appear on television. They must be time clear. If ET is allocated 10 minutes, our president must also allocate 10 minutes, and any other candidate. Right? Then we go to the security of the vote. According to the law, the 2013 Constitution, after I was one of the commissioners during that year, 2013 Constitution is very clear that traditional leaders are not allowed to champion the interest of any political party, or they are not allowed to further the interest of any political party. But what we are witnessing now, the traditional leaders are being used as political commissars of ZANU-PF. They drive people to the polling station. And where on earth an advocate or a teacher, he said, when you go to the polling station, just say, I'm not able to write. A teacher, on the voting day, becomes illiterate. Only on the polling day, your own teacher. Right. Security of the voter and the political freedoms. We are saying, if I vote for Party X, no one must ask me which party do you vote for. It's my secret. Your vote is your secret. Why ask me? I reserve the right to vote for the party of my own choice. So, these are the reforms that we are fighting for. Let me go further and say, on the issue of right, the other issue again is on the young people, right? Young people, this is nothing now to do with the electoral reform, but young people must register to vote. Register to vote and also vote on the voting day. Right? Number two, rigging is but a ceiling. What do I mean? If people come out in numbers, 6 million against 500,000, do you think Zambia can rig elections? They can't. But that margin of my brother Ruto and my brother Ojin, they can play with you. You see now? So, we are sure that come 2023, we're going to reach the target of 6 million. In Shona, we say, Kubona, Makudo, Urima Pakuru. Ugalo Pakuru, Makudo, Anuga, Oziliwa, Orabai, Mumunda. Umabatan Bashi, so, if achieve our target of 6 million, and if some PF is lucky, if they get at least 500,000, what I know now, ZANU-PF, what remains now is just a name, not the real ZANU-PF. Even those who were ZANU-PF before, they've seen that the so-called new dispensation is just an old wine in a new bottle. So there is nothing to watch for. Right. We have to get to rural areas through what we call Umubas, so in the way we call it Umubas. The people in the rural areas, right? Those at the village level, in urban areas, those at the city level, we must make sure wherever you go, people are clear as to who to vote for. I will not get into the details. I will leave this to another forum, maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. The issue of violence, right? I've explained what is happening in your country, Zimbabwe. And there's a clear indication that come 2023, there's going to be serious violence. But what is supposed to be done in Boyera? Martine. As long we've got people at the village level. The village level is the smallest unit in the rural sector. If we've got people in the communities, those people must defend themselves. I thank you.
There will be a question and answer session to line up questions for the speaker that has done this minding that I'm here and in the diaspora and so on. All of the prospects that you mentioned there are quite depressing. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done, and my role is what will be my role. And as a speaker, we have assigned a hospital. I remember Robert Mugabe mentioned your name one time. I was something. Little diaspora in the upcoming election? Is this democratic political relevance? Right? We said we'll talk about we have the Honorable Maya give us the prospects. Now we need to know what is exactly happening in the ground and what will be our role. And I will give the role to you. If you could spend about 10 minutes or so, and then maybe some questions later on. We can have.
So, Dr.
Yes.
My presentation was in detail.
You were a politician.
No, I said my presentation was in 10 minutes. Because, I'm used to allocate time to speakers. So now today I was allocating time.
It doesn't matter. Pastor, please. Okay.
So thank you very much for the opportunity to, speak, with each other. Because I think this is what this is all about. We are having a conversation together, sharing ideas. So my remarks will be very quick, so that we allow enough time for the back and forth, as our chair said. I think that's the idea as well, is for us just to cross-pollinate ideas, to think outside our normal, groups or maybe ways of thinking, so that we kind of figure out what else we can do. And so I'll speak very briefly into this idea of, what those of us in the diaspora can do. And I say this because, at one point I was one of those that were on the ground, and now I'm one of those that are in the diaspora as well. And you discover that no, there's still things and work that can be done even from any location in the world. It's one of the things we discovered when we started this Flag Citizens movement in 2016 all the way through 2019. One of the most powerful things we were able to do was to have conversations and discussions with our brothers and sisters who were in different parts of the world, and we became people who were in one location. So there is a need for us to understand, as we are in the diaspora, that we are not a separate unit to what's happening in Zimbabwe. In fact, we are as important as those who are on the ground, and no one is more important than the other. And I'm glad that the honorable MPs have made their way to come out to the US, and I know that in different places, to connect, person to person, to engage, because it's important. Because there are things that can be done over here that can't be done in Zimbabwe, or that can't be done from Zimbabwe. And sometimes what we need is the physical presence of people in these kinds of spaces where, some of our democracy actors in Zimbabwe cannot be. I also want to just mention that I know that Dr. Chibodendere was supposed to take this particular session, but she couldn't. I'm told that unfortunately she, her family, someone in her family got COVID. So I think as a way to respect everybody, just not to infect everyone, but she's this is one of those persons who is an academic, is someone who I know is very well studied in these things. So I'm representing her. I'm feeling very big shoes here, if you don't mind. I think maybe I might have said a little too much there. Sorry about that, Tafazo. But in any case, I'm glad that I could stand in for her, but also just really be here to represent myself and just be part of what we're talking about. I think one of the important things that people underplay that we have the ability to do in the diaspora is to be able to export back to Zimbabwe the conversations about fighting for our nation. Because sometimes when people are on the ground, people tend to get tired, right? Remember that you are communicating with your relatives. These are people who are living the life every day in Zimbabwe, where they are dealing with this idea of how do we put food on the table for today. People are dealing with the idea of how do I deal with the transportation issues of getting home. So sometimes having space to then commit time and energy to fight for democracy, sometimes it's actually not front and center for some people, because life is difficult. So sometimes the onus falls upon us here in the diaspora. Not that we have it easy, but at least we don't have a government chasing us every day. And so the onus falls on us to be able to continue that conversation of why it's important, or to even update some of the conversations about things that are happening in Zimbabwe and why people must pay attention to some of those things. So that's a role that I hope that people in the diaspora, you and me, don't take for granted. That we don't say, no, they are there on the ground, so they should know what's happening. Sometimes it takes the reminder, the boost, or the information feed from those of us who are here to say, Sekuru, I hear this is happening. Did you know? This is what's happening. Do you know there are people in Zimbabwe today who don't know that Job Sikala and Godfrey Sitole and the others are in prison? But when they go back to they don't know that, And sometimes it's not because they are not interested. It's because the pressures of everyday life means that their focus is on trying to put food on the table. So it becomes part of our conversation, you and me, to remind them, that this is important. And how do we do that? Well, guess who is sending a lot of the money back home? Every year we are now told that we send more than $1 billion, if I'm correct, in terms of remittances. $1 billion, that's a lot of money. In my mind, when we send that kind of money, it must also not just go as money. It must also go as money with a message as well. Yeah. I know people have spoken about, well, maybe we should not send any money back home. I'm of a different view. I can't do that to my mother, unfortunately. I can't starve my poor Mchembere. She's left alone. A year and a half ago, she's on her own. Now in Indonesia, you're getting nothing until you change the government. And she says, so my humble submission is, instead of what we do that, we're going to create a chasm. We start to then create enemies out of our own constituents. And we don't want to do that. What we do is we say to Tijo, every month. Please, panoitwa rari muswakati kana kuti panoitwa indai vote, go and register to vote. My brother Hopewell has been championing the register to vote message. I think this is a perfect way to do it. When you send the money, you say, Mama, remember, please, je pas next door, je pas nani, and then more than the South voter. And that just becomes our mantra. Imagine if every one of us, when we send our money back home, we send it back with that message. Because you must register to vote. I think that there's going to be a powerful response coming, and this is support what Honorable Bayer said. If we can overwhelm that ballot box, the chances of beginning to see a different outcome increase, right? So I think that's part of it. The third and second from last, and then I'm going to stop. Of course, Honorable Bayer already mentioned it, is demanding the diaspora vote. Nobody can demand that vote better than us, because we are the diaspora. We are the ones. We are saying, no, I want you, the country gets a chance to enjoy the fruits of my labor, but I don't get a chance to register my voice as to what I want to see in the country. So the other countries do it, where people that are citizens, of their nation, wherever they are, they get a chance to vote. Why can't we vote too in Zimbabwe? And there are various platforms in which we can begin to represent that kind of reform to take place in Zimbabwe. My last point will be attached to that in terms of the advocacy that you and I can do when we are here in the diaspora. Many of us are academics. Many of us are in places where conversations about democracy and freedom take place. What I have found to be very, very, very powerful, and this is something that I'll give as a testimony, I've ended up in certain conversations that allow me to speak to really powerful individuals, at least influential individuals, whether in government or in private sector, simply because I began by involving myself in conversations to do with democracy and freedom for our region or for the continent or maybe global. In those conversations, I then begin to mainstream Zimbabwe. Nobody will mainstream Zimbabwe on international platforms except Zimbabweans. This is the big lesson that I have learned. That you may have some people that may take up your cause here and there when something happens in Zimbabwe. Maybe a journalist might write something about it. But beyond that, the everyday struggles that happen in Zimbabwe need your voices in the places where you are for you to amplify them. So if you are part of a university or you are part of a community mobilization for something, get involved, but at that very place, then engage the local mayor or the local governor or whoever you can. Believe you me, it can look hard, but people listen. And you say, no, Mr. Mayor, I'm from Zimbabwe. Just to let you know that one of the reasons I'm standing here in solidarity with you concerning whatever they are protesting for is because we have a similar issue back in Zimbabwe. And I'd love for you and the world to know. Before you know it, people start to push this agenda of Zimbabwe and the region into the fold of the global conversation. And you start to have impact. I was privileged on Monday to sit in a closed door session with the US Secretary of State, with 5 other people, and was able to pointedly for 1 hour speak with the Secretary of State exactly about the issues happening in Zimbabwe, exactly on the ground. And I'm a private citizen. I'm not an elected official. I'm not an appointed government official. I'm a private citizen who was recognized because over a period of time, I've consistently in the different places I've gone, without having to publicize all of it, been able to speak about Zimbabwe, speak about our region, and become a trusted voice that is then drawn into conversations that end up having the kind of impact that I hope it will have. So those are my submissions here to say we are not what we do, even just this gathering that we have done here today. This is commendable. This is what needs to be done. The realization that actually are getting together where they are, and they are putting together strategies of how to affect the outcomes for Zimbabwe. I'll leave it at that for now.
Wise words. I have worked a lot in communications in this country. You can never convince a congressman or woman if you are talking to that congressman or woman in an office in DC. Go to his or her constituency, take some constituents of his or hers and go to that meeting and see what happens when he comes back to DC. He breathes fire. Why? Because he's heard it in the constituent of where it really matters for him. That's exactly what you're saying, and I really, really appreciate that. We know that women are central to any struggle. I don't care what it is, whatever struggle it is. And I really think that it is.
We just want to give time to the audience to see if they have any questions for Pastor Ivan. I know you'll be leaving early, so I want to take this opportunity.
I see, okay.
To
Sure,
yes.
yes.
The audience, if they have any.
Any comments for Pastor? Or for anyone? The other people? Yes, go ahead.
I'm not really sure what the law says about the diaspora operating in the country, but is it something that is visible for the diaspora to get together to actually fund an election, or not to fund an election, to fund a candidate for an election? Because some of these things can be easily done. I've heard people say, can we not do the same? Because we always assume that we have to play by the book, but the opponents are not playing by the book. So if we can buy people rights too, because that's a very low bar, and we get behind that and we do that, can that not be done? And how can the diaspora organize around doing something like that?
Well, it's a very good question, and I know that my colleagues will be happy to also speak into that. I for one believe that it is a good idea to be present with the humanitarian aspect of of helping our people. But it's got to be genuine, because if you are going to go and help people, the idea is that you are genuinely concerned about that which they lack, and you're trying your best to fill that void. And one of the things I love about what my brother Hopewell has championed is the idea that when you see something that is missing, that people critically need, and they are being deprived of it by a government that could do it, and if there is a way to alternatively meet that need, then we must do it. Because part of what we then do is we start to teach citizens that it is possible to have those things, and because they're getting them from a private source, they must demand them from government as well, which is where they're supposed to get them from. So I want to hasten to say that I think that it's okay to be done. We cannot, however, break the rules in the same way that our opponent breaks the rules. This is my own perspective. We've got to do it from the perspective of the genuine humanitarian move that we are doing, and then the messaging around that can be around, okay, so this is what is being done to help you by private citizens. We must be careful that we are also not saying, well, if they can vote by, then we are also going to vote by.
It's not illegal, right? To start with giving people something.
No, not at all.
But also there's a realization that we have to meet people where they are. I understand this is something that's on a very philosophical level. I'm with you. We cannot do that kind of thing, and it's not genuine. But our country has been through so much that has become the standard. So in some way, to even get your foot in the door, you have to play by a different set of rules than what you would ideally want to go by. So is that not a possibility? Until we get people to a point where we're saying, you are bigger than rice. Let's vote ideas. Let's move the group forward. I remember, growing up, my grandmother used to take her maize to gym, and we would get school fees from that. I don't know if people are still doing that. Farming is to sustain people, but now we are having different kinds of conversations. And for us to even go back to the initial conversations where we're talking, okay, how do we get people to start selling their produce again? How do we get, somebody has to be empowered. And if we continue doing it, okay, this is too way out, then,
I'm with you, and I want to open up.
Go ahead,
Okay, thank you very much. Our response to my sister's question is a politician. My sister, this is practical because we've done it and we've seen the results. What you asked for, my sister, it's very possible. Dr. Molokele, every election we learn a lot. The Kabila by-election, we've learned something. If we follow election back home, after Kabila election, it was followed by Olilima. And my brother Molokele here will agree with me. Let us remember, I said our response as a politician. We can beat ZANU-PF in their own game. Are you with me, my sister? He said, why can't you do the same? And my answer is, we can beat ZANU-PF in their own game. And there's diaspora citizens. That is very possible. What you asked for. My mother here, during a presentation, she will touch on that one in detail, I think.
Okay.
I had a question that just came, Pastor Ivan. There have been many calls for a diaspora vote. Can Zimbabwe's diaspora expect or hope to exercise their rights before the election? And is this election reform realistic? I know obviously maybe the parliamentarians might answer that, but what is your perspective on the potential as a layman citizen of the diaspora vote, and what should we expect?
I think, to be very honest, even as an ordinary citizen, you have the sense that ZANU-PF knows that if they award the diaspora vote, they are signing their own, vacation notice. So they won't give it. But I also want to say that just because they won't give it does not mean we must stop asking for it or demanding it. The demand for the diaspora vote must never be laid aside just because we know that ZANU-PF won't give it. So it mustn't, by a miracle, they won't, because they know that if they do it, everyone who is in the UK, who is in South Africa, who is in the US, who is in Australia, and in different parts of the world, will not be voting for ZANU-PF. At least, northwards of 90% of those people will not be voting for ZANU-PF. So they know that, and they won't give it. But that is part of, this forms part of the argument of why reforms are needed and why this government is not allowing the democratic space to function as it should. So that's my response, is that they won't give it, but the fact that they won't give it becomes a part of the mobilization to say, therefore, you and I must, because it is part of our heritage and our rights. So we must now demand it, because we know that they won't. We know that they won't give it. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Just a follow-up answer. I think if you are in the diaspora, it is an opportunity to actually make your voice count. There is no way you can keep quiet and then someone in Zimbabwe says you need the diaspora vote. There is no way we can politically articulate it. If it's in New Jersey, if it's in New York, where Zimbabweans are saying want to vote, then it creates the momentum, it creates the pressure. Nelson Mandela said it seems impossible until it's done. There are a lot of concessions that the government of Zimbabwe or the regime has done over the years. And some of them, at the starting point, it seemed impossible. In 1996, 97, we set up the National Constitutional Assembly with a vision to transform the democratic agenda of the country through constitutional reform. And the first time the NCA was announced to the public in Zimbabwe, Minister Edson Zobo said, we will not listen to these people. They are just 10 people sitting under a village tree, and they think we can take them seriously. But we all know that by 1999, there was a constitutional commission, and by 2000, there was a constitutional referendum. So ZANU-PF never supported the idea of us having a new constitution. But eventually, they are the ones who hijacked the constitutional reform process through the appointment of the then Chief Justice Chikyausiku. And people like Jonathan Moyo came back to Zimbabwe as commissioners. So if you want to make change, start with you, believing in what you believe in. I heard Pastor Maurero saying there is no other better person place to present the Zimbabwean agenda, especially in the global space, than a Zimbabwean. It's the same with the diaspora vote. Let's hear more voices. How many Zimbabweans are in the diaspora? How many of them have publicly said they want to vote? Let's hear them. Let's hear the loud clamor, and the pressure will increase. And then from a parliamentary point of view, we all know that 2 constitutional amendments were done in the last year. Constitutional Amendment Bill number 1 and 2 were passed last year. So because of that, the Electoral Act of Zimbabwe has to have a bill. We have no choice. So sooner than later, we've been attending workshops, some of us as parliamentarians. I hope you know that the speaker was in another workshop recently, where he was put in a corner around the diaspora vote, and he got into hot soup. Because one of the arguments about the diaspora vote is that it's very difficult to administer. The other one is that there are sanctions, so people cannot campaign. What about in South Africa? There are no sanctions. What about in Botswana? There are no sanctions. The majority of Zimbabweans are not in the US. They are in Botswana, they are in South Africa, they are in Zambia, they are in Mozambique, they are in Malawi. Even if 10% of those people vote, it makes a difference for 2023. Administratively, we are saying in the opportunity for voting for the diaspora, we're saying the council elections are constituency-based or what-based, the parliamentary elections are constituency what-based, but the presidential election is national. You don't need to belong to a constituency. You don't need to belong to a what. So we know that currently, if you go to Botswana, if you go to South Africa, if you go to Namibia, If you go to Malawi, if you go to Mozambique, if you go to Zambia, all these countries have the diaspora vote. Kenya recently voted, there is diaspora vote in Kenya. So administratively, it's possible for Zimbabweans, especially for the presidential election, to vote. And even if they argue about sanctions, there are no sanctions in Zambia, there are no sanctions in Botswana or South Africa. At least it will be a starting point. And the majority of Zimbabweans in the diaspora live in South Africa. So there is no way we cannot influence the outcome of the presidential election. So my challenge is that the diaspora vote is not something up there. It's something practical that you can fight for. And as Pastor Marole said, at the very least, is a mobilization tool, emotionally, to just make sure the diaspora is emotionally connected to the elections. But the most important thing is, even if it doesn't come in 2023, it will eventually come in 2028. So there's got to be a push from the diaspora. That's the message. Diasporans, you should not wait for the diaspora vote. It's not going to come. You should demand for the diaspora vote. It will eventually come. That's the message.
The beauty of the moderator is that when you see an opportunity, you change person. Want to keep on talking because the governing ZANU-PF party has won elections since Zimbabwe's independence. Is 2023 any different? And can citizens for changes surmount those barriers? Keep talking.
Oh, okay. Okay, I have some few notes here. I've got 10 minutes.
Yes.
So I'm one of the most talkative persons in the room, so be careful of me. I'm a culprit, so you have to moderate me in terms of time. My name is Hon Molokele. I'm a human rights lawyer. I established a legal practice of my own in my hometown where I was born in Unga. It's called Molokele Chambers. But I'm also a parliamentarian. I was elected in July 2018. I'm the member of parliament for Unga Central constituency. And also one of the sort of leaders of the CCC because I'm the interim deputy treasurer general for the party. And I'm a former spokesperson of the party. I just wanted to thank the organizers for this opportunity. Vanatawanda, Tafadzwa, Vanamlilo, and everyone else who's been heavily involved in preparation for this event. It's very important that as we go towards 2023, we create more platforms like this. They will sustain the momentum. Otherwise, to wait for Twitter, to wait for WhatsApp is not enough. Most Zimbabweans will come aboard as they see that there is the momentum. So please, this should not be the last of such platforms. Make more of such platforms. You will see more people joining. I've been involved in pioneering a lot of movements, pioneering a lot of institutions, and I can assure you that they start like this. You have to start somewhere, and it's important that you continue. So don't be discouraged by the turnout. For me, the topic is very difficult, but I'll try to answer it. I think some of you have got access to the Bible. They've heard about the story of David and Goliath. David was not a soldier. He was just sent to check on his brothers, whether they were doing well. And I know that those who read the Bible know that when David arrived at the army camp, one of his elder brothers warned him and said, "We know you are a troublemaker. You are about to start your Msikanza here. Please be careful here. This is war. We are not joking here. This is not a playground." But as the story goes, eventually, David is the one who decided the future of Israel. David is the one who actually went and slew the giant who was defying the arm of Israel. ZANU-PF is like Goliath. ZANU-PF is an upper hand. ZANU-PF is an unfair advantage. On the face of it, just like Goliath used to stand before the arm of Israel, and Israel convinced itself that they could not stand up to the giant until a shepherd boy who saw things differently because they had a different perspective, they had a bigger picture perspective. They managed, through a stone, a small pebble, to change the direction of Israel. So as we enter into 2023, my most important message to you is that just like David, know who you are, know who you represent, know how much power you have, and don't overrate the giant. Some of you, you are giving too much credit to ZANU-PF. You are giving too much credit to ZANU-PF. You are not even having time to look at their point of weaknesses. You are just assuming. that ZANU is Goliath, it will win. Unlike David, who refused to accept the posturing of the giant. There are entry points of weakness of the regime, and we should focus on them. At a strategic level, we cannot win the battle next year if we continue to harp on the advantages that ZANU-PF has. The moment you do that, you will lose energy, you lose power. If you go to a church where a pastor every Sunday they speak about the dangers of Satan and the power of Satan, stop going to that church. Because the pastor should be talking about the greatness of the God and the powers of God. Not every Sunday listening about how terrible, or how horrible, or how powerful Satan is. So for Zimbabwe to have change, we need to have a mindset change. And it begins with you. Satan is Satan. There is clarity on that one. So I know that there are a lot of people who subconsciously concede defeat and say to you or to themselves, ZANU-PF is too big. ZANU-PF is an upper hand. ZANU-PF controls the system. ZANU-PF has rigged elections. ZANU-PF will rig 2023. ZANU-PF is guaranteed of victory 2023. I have the privilege of speaking to parliamentarians from ZANU-PF, and the mood in ZANU-PF is not as confident. It's not as confident. Most ZANU-PF MPs are not sure about next year. So if you are worried about next year, try ZANU-PF MPs. They are actually feeling the heat. With the ground, on the ground there, things are not good. And the signs are there for all to see. We won. I was in Bulilima 116. We won. We actually do not have physical existence in Bulilima right now. If you go there and look for the organ there, I don't think you'll find one. Is there an organ in 116? But it's the citizens. Our candidate, Makadi Moyo, up to April, she was not actively involved in any political process in her entire life. But we said we want a citizen-based candidate. And we managed to get her. She was not a politician. She came from the community. ZANU-PF lost. I have videos on my phone where I'm shouting to the top of my voice, ZANU-PF has lost. ZANU-PF can lose. If only you believe. It lost in a resettlement area. Ward 16 of Bulilima East is a resettlement area that has never voted for the opposition. It also won in Ward 1 and almost won in the other one where we were number 2. So what I'm saying is, the time for change is there. It has arrived. So stop giving ZANU-PF an unfair advantage. That's the message saying. Because ZANU-PF is already aware that things are not looking good. So the advantage is not with ZANU-PF. The advantage is with the opposition at this moment in time of history. So what will ZANU-PF do? ZANU-PF will not play fair. This is not a popularity contest. ZANU-PF is aware that the moment they allow it to be a popularity contest, it's a whitewash. There is only one guaranteed winner if it's a popularity contest. Advocacy and Chamisa. And it's not just a winner, but a runaway winner. What we call in ZANU-PF language, landslide victory. So ZANU-PF is not going for a popularity contest for 2023. So let's start from there. ZANU-PF is not expecting what? A popularity contest. So what is their strategy? ZANU-PF is not focusing on how popular it is. It already knows that it's beyond redemption. ZANU-PF is focusing on the system. That's where Shona people say, don't make them race. That's where ZANU-PF is focusing. How do we manipulate the electoral process so that we prevent a popular victory for Advocacy and Chamisa? So it's already clear who is the winner. We don't even need to sit down. If you've got a witch doctor who throws bombs, you are wasting your money. Chamisa has already won when it comes to a popularity contest. So ZANU-PF already knows the answer, that Chamisa has won. So ZANU-PF's strategy is on the election system. How do we manipulate the system to our advantage? Which they actually did in 2018. Advocacy and Chamisa actually won in 2018. But the margin of victory was about 400,000 votes. So it's possible to manipulate the results if the gap is not too much. Which is the reason why for 2023 we want the gap to be much more, to make it harder for the region. That's where the strategy is. There are a lot of people who have given up on 2023. I'm not one of them. I'm refusing to accept defeat before the rest starts. I'm saying there is opportunity for change, not for Triple C, not for Chamisa, not for you and me, but for the people of Zimbabwe. It's an opportunity for change for all of us. And if you want Zimbabwe to continue to be a pariah state, to be a basket case, to be a neglected, forgotten country, rejected country, then 2023 is a non-event for you. There are people who have died on the Limpopo River, eaten by crocodiles, refusing to live in Zimbabwe. It's one of the most underpopulated countries in the world, but people are still living in the country. If you go right now to Johannesburg and check how many buses per day come from Zimbabwe to South Africa, you will see what I'm talking about. The people who live in New York are more than all the people who live in Zimbabwe as a country. But still people are living in Zimbabwe every day, abandoning the country. It's a rejected country. Yet Zimbabwe is a beautiful country. It's a motherland. It's a blessed country. It's rich, diamonds, platinum, lithium, coal, copper, gold, you name it. Tourism, we can talk of Big Falls, Great Zimbabwe, we are rich. So Zimbabwe is not poor. Zimbabwe has got poor leadership. That is the message for 2023. So how are we going to move forward as we face 2023? ZANU-PF is triggering the machinery. For example, you saw the new appointments for the commission. They appointed their children. Bazukuru, come and become commissioners. So that in the event that there is a need, they can call up family matters. You know your thing. Do your thing for the family. So they are already preparing. All the state institutions, about 5 years ago when ED came in, he tried to make them as neutral as possible. I remember when I was appointed spokesperson, I went to ZBC. You know, is it in Togo? Gilbert in Togo. You know the journalist?
The one who came from
he came from the diaspora. He came. It actually happened. He came from England to work in Harare and pocket him. And I met him. And he said, Dan, we're trying to change the identity of ZBC. Do you know where he is today as I speak to you? Where is he? He's back in England. U10. Back in England. I think he now is on newsbubble.com. Yeah. So what we have learned is that they said we're the new dispensation, we're the new republic, what second republic? But it didn't last. It's a gloss. It didn't last. Today they are back to square one, default mode, survival instinct. So all the state institutions, whether it's ZESA, ZINWA, ZBC, ZimPapers, whatever, Zinara, everything they said and everything else which has got national identity, ZANU-PF is going to manipulate it. And it's a no-go area for the opposition. ZEC is one of their primary targets. You heard that it's got military personnel, former intelligence people. They've been planted to make it harder, not impossible, harder for the opposition to win. So there we are. What are we going to do about it? I forgot to mention that there are two other battlefield areas that they're using. The voters' roll, it has been mentioned. To get a voters' roll is like this, slippery. There is a lot of nonsense happening there. Delimitation, that's another game that they're playing. They look at a constituency that is traditional one by the opposition, they try to slice it a bit so that they take the rural part to that and take another road. So like Mazoe and Water, to neutralize the chances of what? The opposition winning. So the delimitation is also part of the process of making sure that they reduce the chance of the opposition. So they've got a lot of money. The Triple C is not funded. Some of you are aware of that, but it's a public fact. Triple C has no funds. So they have to come up with a plan. But ZANU-PF and MDC Alliance, or what you call it, MDCT, under Monzon, they get funding from the state. It's a race where others are given Mazoe and Water that maybe along the way you might get test. So start. And that is the official allocation that they get. Outside that, they've got people like Tagwire, Tagwire is part of the ZANU-PF machinery. If you go right now to ZANU-PF building, from a laptop to food that is being eaten to cars that are parked downstairs, they are coming through Tagwire. People are getting Land Rover V8s, but Tagwire is a front for it. It's a front for ZANU-PF. So they have an unfair advantage financially. So when we look at the structure and system, it's difficult for us. The odds are against us. Voter registration is another area. They are making sure that there is no proper awareness on voter registration. 5 years ago, we voted. We expect maybe 1 million new registered voters. How many should we expect from 2018 to 2023?
We have had 1.8 million people turning 18 since 2018, but unfortunately, less than 150,000.
So when the results came from Zambia, one of the key analyses of the results was that the youth vote proved to be a deciding factor. Remember, in the previous election in 2016, the gap between HH and Lungu was about 50,000 votes. The gap between Lungu and HH in 2021, 1 million votes. And the key analysis was that a lot of new registered voters voted for what? For change. So ZANU-PF was not asleep. So that's one of the lessons from Zambia. So they say, even to get an ID in Zimbabwe, it's now harder than to get a passport. If you go to the, what do they call the place in Harare where people queue for passports? Yes, there is actually a parallel queue for IDs. If you go at 6 a.m. on Monday, you'll find people queuing for IDs. It had never happened before. So it's a strategy to make sure that the young ones don't even have IDs and don't even register to vote. So the ZEC is making sure that there is no proper strategy on voter awareness. So voter registration is now civil society and opposition. ZEC is not doing its duty, constitutional duty, to make sure that there are new voters. And it's part of the preparation for 2023, that as many new voters don't vote. And they hope it will reduce the chances of an opposition victory. So ZANU-PF will make sure that they use system, they will manipulate it. The other area is the polling agents. In our previous elections, we had some polling stations where we were not polling agents. And as CCC, we are working hard this year to make sure that by Christmas, every polling station in the country has got at least 4 polling agents. Because that's one other advantage that ZANU-PF had in terms of rigging. Even in terms of candidates, there are some wards which were declared before the election started in 2018, where we have no candidates. We will make sure that there are candidates everywhere to just reduce that problem. And then the other issue that I want to highlight, the CCC has changed its candidate selection process. In 2018, we depended on primary elections. They were subject to manipulation. In another occasion, I can explain how difficult it was even for new candidates to come in. Popular community-based candidates. So if you check in March from this year onwards until now, the organizer is here. We are not doing primary elections, are we? We are using what? Citizen-based candidates. We are using community-based candidates. So we try our best to make sure that the candidate is from the community, is from the citizen. The process is being perfected. Hopefully by end of this year, the criteria will be done properly. But in the last by-election that you are seeing, those candidates are not product of primary elections. So we're trying to move away from the old system. And the new system, hopefully, to improve our chances that we have a community-driven, community-based candidate. And I hope it is going to help even Advocacy, Chamisa, even CCC for 2023, because we know that in 2018, some of the candidates were riding on the popularity of President Chamisa, but they were not on the ground, and it reduced the voter turnout and the margin of victory. And then there is also disunity. ZANU-PF is at war against itself. Some of you are not aware, but there is a conflict in ZANU-PF. Senator Watson Coupe died about 2 months ago. I went to attend the funeral in Blower. During the break, I spoke to some of the ZANU-PF MPs, and they said, you know what, Honorable? at the ground things are hard for us. And I said, what's happening? He says, we as ZANU-PF MPs were in trouble. We can't go onto the ground because we're being forced to choose sides. And I said, which sides are you choosing? He says, no. On the ground, ZANU-PF has chosen sides. It's either with the general or you're with what? ED. In fact, there have been public occasions, including recently in Bulawayo, where people proclaimed general as a president in public and greeted, president, and everyone, in Bulawayo. I think it was in August. He went to Bulawayo and people were calling him president, not private, in public. I think it was a wedding or something like that. He was being addressed as president. So they've taken positions. People have said, I'm ED, I'm general. There are people at court fighting about the legitimacy of ED. Next month, ZANU-PF is supposed to have a Congress. So there is a backline being drawn. We can't see it. It's not possible to see it. But it's happening. We can't tell how far deep it is, but there is no unity in ZANU-PF. MPs are telling me that if they are seen talking to this one, they ask, so are you with the general? Then they talk to this one and say, so are you with ED? So they are failing to take sides. But they're saying it's not easy to be an MP, especially at a constituency level, because people have taken sides. And we're also being forced. And we said from experience, we don't want to choose sides. We know that if we choose one of the sides, by Christmas will be history. So we want to wait until we're sure. And the time is not on our side. We can't choose ED or the general until we're sure who is winning. And from 2017, it's clear that it's not easy to know who is winning. Because Grace was busy making noise. 2 weeks later, she was gone. And she's been silent up to today. So those who said, where are they now? Some of them who survived and spent the last 4 years in parliament quiet. They are there, but they are quiet. Because they know that last time they survived by a cliffhanger. 2 weeks later, it differed. So it's not easy to predict. So everyone is scared. ZANU-PF is not as united as you think. And there is opportunity to take advantage. Unity of the opposition. ZANU-PF spent the last 3 years trying to divide the opposition. They invested a lot in 2020 using the Supreme Court decision with recalls, with everything. And in 2020, it was so difficult for elected representatives, whether at council or at government, at parliament level, to be seen in public with Advocate Nelson Chamisa. The moment you did that, you're on the firing line. I was telling someone the other day that some of my favorite photos with Advocate Chamisa were taken in 2020. And my most favorite of all photos were taken in December at Lady Stanley Cemetery, where we're burying Senator Mlo. Hey, do you know the security came to me and said, Honorable, come and you stay next to Advocate Chamisa, because the people who are next to him, people say Chamisa, lawyer, so I was asked, like, come and stay next to Chamisa. So that the people who are asking for selfies can see Chamisa is not alone in Bulawayo. On that day, everyone who met in Bulawayo had an excuse. Phone calls were on voicemail. Councillors, mayors, MPs, senators disappeared, provincial leaders disappeared into thin air. And my group had already strengthened a whipping shackle. And everyone knew that everyone who stands with Chamisa today, they are going for the recall. They disappeared. I cannot mention them one by one. But I was there in Bulawayo, and I can tell you, it was one of the most difficult days of Chamisa's life. People were not picking calls. So today, everyone wants to take a photo with Chamisa. Selfie with Chamisa. Triple C. Why are they doing that? They thought they were throwing him deep down. Instead, they were burying him. And he became a seat. Now it's harvest time. The opposition is less divided today than it was in 2018, after the date of our icon Tangram. Chamisa's leadership was questioned in 2018. But today, there is no dispute in Zimbabwe anymore. Who the leader of the opposition is. There is no confusion anymore. There are chances, there are opportunities, there are everything else. But the bottom line is, for the voter in Zimbabwe, it's a two-horse race. It's a multi-party democracy, will allow for Brian Mteki, who else, Maduku, Mnenza, everyone else But the voters are not confused. They have got two options, ZANU-PF or Triple C. Whoever is the candidate from ZANU, whoever is the candidate from Triple C. For Triple C, we already know the candidate. It's Advocacy and Chamisi. So the opposition is not as divided as it was 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, or 5 years ago. The opposition has actually regrouped and has come back stronger. Everyone is rallied behind Advocacy and Chamisi. Even the civil society at one stage, it was struggling. Today, there is no confusion about who is the leader of the opposition. So it's an upper hand for us. As the opposition, as we go into 2023, we are more united than ZANU-PF, which is more divided than us. So let's take advantage of that. How many of you are expecting that ZANU-PF will win the election? Can you lift up your hands? If you are expecting ZANU to win, you don't want to confess your sin. Okay, I got to other platforms where I've asked that question, and I've seen some hands. Okay, those who are expecting that ZANU-PF will win, they are not wrong. The odds are what? Against what? The opposition. But if we get organized, if we get the diaspora involved, if we get everyone else aboard, every vote count, every whatever count, we will have an opportunity to come up with a surprise victory. It's not going to happen overnight. We'll have to put our hands on deck. We'll have to get more organized. We'll have to address all the issues of concerns. But it doesn't stop us from putting up a challenge. And I'm one of the people in Zimbabwe who is convinced that the outcome of the 2023 elections is not as predictable as some people think. And I'm confident that if we put extra effort in terms of strategy and resources, Zambia Part 2 will happen in Zimbabwe. I saw the photos today of President HH having a state dinner with President Biden. And I said, this is the direction that I want Zimbabwe to go. This look East thing, China thing, I don't want it. I want to look West. So hopefully, when we come from September 2023 for the next United Nations General Assembly, all of you here will be coming to the airport, JFK, not to protest, but to welcome the new president of the Republic of Zimbabwe.
Well, thank you. I like, it brings very well into my ears. Although I know that we have a lot of work to do here to do what you say might happen. It will not happen if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. Two things. What are the conditions of women in Zimbabwe and the role they play in political participation? Can you please talk about that, Ms. Dondo? And also, I think when you are done, Dr. Molokele will make some additions to it. But it's an important factor. I cannot emphasize it enough. Historically, you don't go anywhere if women are not participating, period. Right? So, I'd like this if you could.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think it's very good to be here. And thank you, organizers. Thank you for having me. My name is Comfort Dondo, and I was asking myself, what am I doing here? I'm not at all political person. As I like to describe myself, I am a women's rights advocate. So last 2 weeks I spent in Zambia. I spent with President HH's team. I always believe that insanity is when you keep doing the same things and they don't work. But actually, when you can go to where things that seem to be working and you learn quickly and you can adapt and change can come that way. And so some of my reflections from Zambia has been around how the Zambian people, when they get fed up with a regime that is repressive, they are not passive, they're not passive-aggressive, but they're assertive around removing that. So that's one thing that I took from that. As far as asking about the role that women play in politics in our nation, I would like to say some of my observations have been around the fact that women are silenced in Zimbabwe. We don't have any more hunters in Zimbabwe. And so I'm a storyteller, I'm not a politician, so I'm going to share some few stories. Of late, we've had a high-profile case, and I'll bring it up because I've been one of the only women working, kind of advocating on it. It's regarding Mary Chiwenga. I invite you to hold how you feel about the whole story to yourselves, but just looking at her as a person who deserves human rights, and as a mother who has not seen her children for 2 years and just had her arm amputated, despite some of the background, Mary Chiwenga is an epiphany or an allegory of Zimbabwe herself and how she's been abused as a nation. Mary Chiwenga's case, I want to bring it up because it showcases how someone who formerly was a high-profile woman can be abused in public in that manner. And the whole nation is quiet. When I was in Zambia, I visited with the permanent secretary for President Echech. And she told me one of the giants in Zimbabwe who represents women's rights at the AU was in Zambia. And she was openly talking about the Mary Chiwenga case to the PEMSEC. But when we hold spaces and we hold lives and we invite her to stage, she cannot say anything. And this is a woman that I call a giant in the women's rights movement in Africa, on the whole continent of Africa. So if a giant like that can be silenced by a regime, and she cannot even speak up on behalf of a case like Mary's, then what is happening to the women in Buhera, where I'm from? What is happening to the women on the ground? What is happening to the young girls from the locations? What brought me to this work was really doing women's rights advocacy here in the US. And I started getting calls, and we didn't have any funding. And I still just did the work on the ground. And I think I'll share some of the trends that we've seen. There's since COVID-19, there's been a hike in sexual violence, assault in children in Zimbabwe. And what's happening is that the perpetrators of the sexual violence, they actually bribe the police. The police take the bribe, and then the perpetrators continue to go free. And then they continue to perpetrate. That's one thing. The other thing that I wanted to share is just the idea that it's mostly but our girl children are not being protected at all. And I'm gonna share some of the little write-ups that I had here when I was coming, comparing Zimbabwe to other nations. I said, while some nations are grooming younger women to become ministers, like if we look at countries like Finland, our nation is grooming our young women to become, for lack of a better word, sex toys. Okay. Recently, we have our Minister of Education marrying a 22-year-old, and he's 74, and that's public information. I really think that I just came here to share some of the work that we're doing. We try to do on the ground in Zimbabwe, but it's been really hard to do it on the ground. Last year, we tried to launch a campaign program on the ground, but it seems like you have to go through a lot of different steps. And you also have to go through explaining yourself, like why you're there, as if you're not from Zimbabwe, and then you're stopped. And so I think as of last week, we got invited to Zambia. We're gonna start launching some programs in Zambia because it's workable there. I think for me, as a women's rights advocate, I'm very concerned about we can't even begin to talk about participation of women in politics because it feels like it's the tokenization of women. Women are being tokenized. I don't know if that statement makes sense. The women who are in politics, it's almost like we have to check them up and then they're in politics. But then what is the participation of women? Are women really being represented when we have women like Mary Chiwenga not even having their rights observed, right? And then in ending, I'm going to keep this short because I think some of my panelists have already said a lot. In ending, I want to say I did make a little bit of a comment on President Mnangagwa's submission to the UN General Assembly. He mentioned that the rights of women and girls in Zimbabwe is on his priority list. And I pushed back a lot because I'm doing a lot of work on the ground, even though I'm not on the ground. I do have a lot of advocates on the ground. And we can just see the way any kind of cases, any kind of rape cases. Like last week, I brought a young woman from Pretoria who has immigrated to South Africa. She was burned with acid. The perpetrator who burned her is affiliated with ZANU-PF, and so he's going scot-free, and he's literally deformed her face. And we have to have surgery for her in Minnesota for almost over $1 million in just reconstructive surgery. And when I posted her story on social media, I had a lot of minions from I don't know where, but they were commenting that we do have good doctors in Zimbabwe. Why are you making a big deal about the US doing this surgery? So we have those are just examples of cases that we work on. But I want to share that I think on every single day we get at least 3 to 4 cases of child sexual abuse that are reported. And we have those cases, at least 2 of those 3 to 4 cases, the police is bribed and they're not doing anything about moving the case forward. And even I work with 2 attorneys on the ground. Those cases are not moving forward. So I can imagine what kind of generation we're raising of young, and it's not just young girls, by the way, it's young women and girls. We begin some cases of young boys being violated that way. Those are just a few examples I wanted to bring up. And then in ending, I also want to mention, I think one of the panelists mentioned the youth involvement in voting. And I want to say, I think our youth are being heavily drugged. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we have a high rate of drug usage among the youth. I think we should talk more about that, why the youth are being heavily drugged. And I say that intentionally. The youth are not on drugs, they're being heavily drugged. In any nation, when you have a kind of discontent, who is to bring change or who is to protest, who is to be at the forefront is the young man. That happened in Sri Lanka, we saw that. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that our young people are heavily on drugs. And I think we should critically look into that and why they are, and maybe think about what are the ways that we can try to assist our young people in getting rehabilitated. I did bring some investors last few times I went home who actually wanted to invest in a rehab center. But of course, again, we went through the bureaucracy, and people always want to open home, and I took back the investors back with me in the States because I realized that the system itself is not ready for that kind of help. So with that being said, I just came to share the fact that I think before we start talking about women's participation in politics or in how women are being actively involved in the electoral process, I think we should look at are we even observing the rights of women in Zimbabwe? If we just look at someone like Mary Chiwembe, and I want to keep lifting her name up because she's a good example of if a woman like her can have her rights violated in that manner, what is happening to the woman on the ground? What is happening to the women that are invisible? And I think with that being said, that's my submission.
I think that we should keep this one alive because if there's an intent, whether thought about or just maybe happening of suppression of women in any other sphere, there's suppression of women in political activism, right? And that obviously affects the number of votes that you get when you are in an election and so on, if they're not participating. It's a major issue for us. And maybe political activists here can address it as we talk about this. But Dr. Molokele, if you could just add on to some of the things that she's saying, I just see a major problem here. You treat people marriage worker style, and then by the millions, they don't participate as a result, and the cause. ZANU-PF stays at home.
Thank you. I want to thank Dr. Milo and Tafatwa and all the organizers of this event. As you can see, I was not, and I'm still not on that program. Chief called me when I was on my flight, and I said, I'm a patriotic Zimbabwean. As long as it has to do with Zimbabwe, I'll have something to say. So thank you so much. I want to first respond to my sister who was asking about if the diaspora can do something for the people back home. Yes, the diaspora can do something, and we are doing something as individuals and as groups already. But the problem is that as Zimbabweans, so we are not like united like other nationalities. I'll give an example. I know a group of people from Kenya. They've set businesses together. They just put together their resources here in the US and back in Kenya. I know a friend of mine who is Ugandan. They are actually the key people to do with drones, the use of drone technology in medical laboratories in Uganda. They just came together as Ugandans in the diaspora, and they worked on that project, and it's doing very well. So the key thing is unity. And I'll go back to what Honorable Molokele said. It starts with us as individuals. It starts with us as individuals. I met somebody on Twitter. He's called Denford Jory. We now work together every Sunday. We have a program, and we pushed each other to say Zimbabwe. Right now, I didn't know this guy, but we are making sanitary pads for people back home. Where I come from, I was raised in Bikita, Mashingo, and my husband is from Victoria Falls. So I do both as an individual, and I know this young lady here, Tafazo, has done a lot for Buhera. She's single-handed, but you know, you have connections. I've donated masks for the whole school in Bikita without using a cent. Dr. Ranga, Simbiso Ranga, who is, some of you know him, I just told him, oh, the school where I went to, the people are so poor. How many masks do you need, Mama? He gave them to me, and my son gave me a brand new laptop to give to that school because I said, I only knew a computer when I was in college, and I don't want that to happen to my village community. And he donated. I didn't use a cent. All I did was to find a person going to Zimbabwe. So we can do quite a lot as individuals and as groups. And also, like you see, I'm Triple C, I'm not ashamed to be. We have twinning programs that are going on. In Chiwundura, close to where he comes from, I was twinned, my branch here was twinned with Chiwundura. We started an agricultural program for the youths there. Instead of them going into drugs, they were now raising chickens, they were now plowing this and that. So a lot of other people have twinning programs or work as individuals, let alone people like Hopewell here. He can find resources while in Zimbabwe. So here we do resource mobilization as diaspora. That's very important because if you find resources for people, if you connect them to donors, if you connect them even to people with information, then it will help. Information is very important. I taught in Zimbabwe, raced through the ranks to teach at university level, but I didn't quite know what I know now due to exposure. So when I went back home, I said, what were we teaching? Is this education functional? And autism, can hear, but cannot process the information. How was it? And I was part of that because I didn't know anything. So the diaspora is a lot of information, lots of technology. Let's take it back home. So back to what my sister here spoke about. I agree with her that there are abuses of women, but in Zimbabwe, it's abuse of everybody, including men. So it's affecting almost everybody. And then the role of women in politics. Yes, our traditional way of life, vana mama vegara mukicheni, anati ndinoenda kumatare. So that same concept is slowly shifting. It's a mindset that we need to shift. Because if you want to do politics and you're a woman, you get names, or this and that. I'm glad my husband is not like that. He is with me right here and he supports me. The fact that they were in the kitchen for too long, at times, they also fear to participate in politics because they don't know how to do it. I won't hesitate to mention this. Just Rowa Shaumesha, Navachibaya, na Hon Molokele, in 2018, I'll give you an example. These people lack exposure and enlightenment. Go to this province and sell yourself, advertise yourself. Why you think as a woman you want to take this position? Hey, msavotele mainingi, wakazotora mdumo wa ndingi, dai, vanozo dai. So, lack of knowledge, we need leadership training. And I'm glad in Zimbabwe we have that Women Academy by Stabiletewa, where you can be taught to sell yourself what you have to offer. I can drive, I can do this, not for me. So that's what's holding us back. Then, recently, ZEC is prohibiting women from participating due to the, high costs of participation. If you want me to have 1,000 so that I can stand in as an MP candidate, do I want to? And the times they did is the breadwinner. I'm just like chilling the legs and what have you. Where do I get the money from? So women are kind of excluded through that way. And we also have something to celebrate, or some individuals to celebrate. It's not everything that's very negative about women participation. We can mention names of women who have made it in politics, or who have made changes in the areas where they come from as members of parliament, as just councillors, or as civilians who are in politics. And I won't mention my name. I told you I do things in Pikita, I do things in Victoria Falls. Even the voter registration, I can say I'm a civilian, but also I'm a politician because I'm Triple C. The helpers that we have in Victoria Falls, most of them were from Butani, Toronto, and some of them. They are married. We have three, and they are wives. They didn't have birth certificates or IDs. I think due to Kukura or I don't know. But we set a condition. Hakuna relation and also not stupid because we want them to go involved. And they actually didn't have birth certificates. Said, if your child has a birth certificate, bring it. I go to the Prime, I talk to Manchuma, the school head. I pay the fees, I buy uniforms, I buy tracksuits and everything. So it's a way of, like Pastor Yvonne said, you are not going to refuse or deny your mom food or help, but it's a bit conditional. And they now appreciate it because their kids look nice. They always send pictures and stuff like that. So women can participate in politics if they have the right guidance and the right support. I have young women here, and I won't hesitate to go back to Tafago. She does a lot. She does a lot. Whether she learned it from her parents or what, but if she set her mind on doing something, she does it. So there's nothing to stop this young lady. If she wants to go for any office, she will go because she has the right grooming or environment. So the mindset matters. Thank you.
Advocacy on behalf of women, on behalf concerned, it is what's our role? What are we doing with all of these issues that you heard today? We are in the diaspora, as a person already said. We have an international community that we have to deal with and work with, and how should it be helping us do some of the work that we need to do? And Hopewell, if you could enlighten us, the struggle, as they said, is ours in the diaspora. It's not for our host people that in these countries we live. It's our struggle. How do we get them to be on our side to do the things that these two gentlemen need to do at home? If you could please.
Now, after I passed the politics, thank you so much, and thank you, Chafanzo. I'm very happy to be here because I believe that the diaspora is the engine for change in Zimbabwe. We are there in Zimbabwe as foot soldiers, but the engine is the diaspora. And I've been saying this for a long time. Each time I've raised money, whether my view has always been that I'm a journalist, but I'm a friend of Triple C. I'm not embarrassed to say that. So sometimes I will talk to the organizer and say, guys, why are you not doing this? Then he says, no, my brother, we make money here. And I say, okay, let me use my reach to raise money. So all the thousands that I've raised, including recently, we raised 10,000 for my scholar in my story. It has come from me. Without the diaspora, I would not have been able to do that. To a point where Zimbabweans living at home, but why do you always do this GoFundMe? Where do we fit in? You know, and this is a message for you. You need to create a platform for Zimbabweans back home to regularly put whatever they can, and whenever they can. And this is important because he will tell you that he can't do anything without money. Everything requires money. And you know, we are in a country where we are in a struggle, but this struggle is very simple because what ZANU-PF is about is the corrupt regime. And corruption requires power for you to continue doing it. So ZANU-PF is not fighting for power in order to do something with the country. It's fighting for power in order to retain its ability to be corrupt. So I always like, sometimes I struggle with politicians because I like talking about the reality of life for the individuals in Zimbabwe, how it affects people on a day-to-day basis. And I always use the example of women. That in Zimbabwe, the biggest hospital in Zimbabwe is with only one maternity theater. And one maternity theater costs only $37,000 to build. But the maternity theater that is working today at Harare Hospital was built by Ian Smith in 1977. ZANU-PF has not built a single maternity theater since 1980. For the 42 years they've been in power. That's why you have 2,500 women dying every year giving birth. And people don't talk about this, and I always put pressure on politicians that, guys, if you want to talk about things that are affecting our people, talk about women who are dying giving birth, because everybody was born by a woman. It could have been your mother that died, and you wouldn't be here. And right now, Paranatua Hospital is not working at all. If you go today, they won't treat you. I remember when I was flying out of France, I sent out a tweet because a mother was sending messages to me on Facebook to say, Manangu, I'm in trouble. And I felt helpless because the plane was on the runway. So I sent a message in the number to say, please guys, if you can assist this lady. Parena was operating on what they call emergency mode. So you can't get anything done. There is nothing in our hospitals. If you go to Paranatua today, there's not even a painkiller. They don't have them. And the government knows this, and they are not even embarrassed about it. So the crisis that we face, it's a survival crisis. It's no longer about politics in one end of no. Where you decide that, oh, I don't like this guy, this is what he did, that time, 20 years ago, he made this statement. That's not what we are fighting about in Zimbabwe. We are fighting about the survival of our people. So in Zimbabwe today, if you get cancer and the doctor says you need radiotherapy, it means it's a death sentence. Zimbabwe does not have a single radiotherapy machine in all its public hospitals. Not even one. But I'm sure you saw the video of the Minister of Health in Limpopo. And she called me Saturday after she had met the president of South Africa. And she said, I want you to see these videos. We have brought in this cancer machine for Limpopo. The president did not even know how much it cost. What he was trying to tell me was that, yes, we have corruption in South Africa, but I'm able to buy my own things as NEC for health for Limpopo, and the president didn't even know, because you could hear President Ramaphosa say, so how much did it cost? And she says, we paid 3 million rand for it. 2 days ago, I posted a Land Cruiser and I said 400,000. I did it deliberately. And I did not explain, because I knew what was going to happen. I knew that some guys were going to come and say, I don't need a Land Cruiser is not like that. But I had a joker in my pocket. So I did that, and they said, no, Land Cruiser, here's the evidence, it's so much. And I said, yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about. Then I threw a video to prove that the RBZ and the Ministry of Finance actually paid, they said they paid 400,000. And I said, now you're telling me that it's 180. So your party was lying.
Yeah.
You know. And $400,000 will build 11 maternity theaters. That's one Land Cruiser that is in government service. It will build you 11 maternity theaters. ZANU-PF has failed to build a single one in the biggest hospital, which is Harare Hospital. So, that said, we need to figure out how are we going to get out of this crisis. The only solution that we have at the moment, and this is what made me say, you know, I was talking with Dr. Alex Magasa, and I said, Shaman, I know this is not neutral, I just my part. But I think we've come to a time where we need to identify, data and such. So I'm now going to identify publicly. Just identify with this party and identify with its leader. Advocate Chamisa used to come to my house. Tafad's father used to come to my house. They told him a picture. Because Zanu had put us in a corner where you are embarrassed to be seen with spy. You are embarrassed to be seen with a white person. The mind is went on our side. And we said, no, we need to fight that. We need to fight to a point where people feel liberated as opposition to be seen also with ZANU-PF guys. We can go to the pub, we can talk, and we can disagree, And sometimes that's how you get into, because some of the Zambian guys, as you were saying, are frustrated as well with what's happening. So the best way to get out of this mess is a free and fair election. Is it possible? They've answered that question already. So I guess my role is to say, what do we do internationally to deal with this thing? You guys are very key and important to what's going to happen next. ZANU-PF does not want a situation where its embassies, that is running our embassies, are being besieged by you guys demanding your votes. That's the one that. Don't think you are going to do it through Twitter. You have, if you were to go to DC, those in London, every weekend to go and demand your vote, somebody is going to say this is now embarrassing. We can't carry on like this. And the diaspora is so important because the diaspora contributes, our budget, top is 3.5 billion, but we know it's actually 3 billion. The national budget for Zimbabwe. The diaspora says 1.5 billion. That's how important you are to this economy. So when you look at that, you have a right to demand a vote. Of course, it's going to say, okay, even if I want to give them a vote, but I'm not allowed to come in campaign in New York because of sanctions and this and that. But South Africa, you're allowed to go there. Botswana, you're allowed to go there. Let's do a test case like what the Kenyans did. They said, okay, these particular countries are the ones that are going to have a diaspora vote. That's how we are going to do it. It's not going to suddenly happen like that. You have to fight for it. But more importantly for me, you are key because 75 to 80% of our skills are now outside Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe, we have about 20% skills left. So you find that even if you call a plumber, you are getting a substandard plumber because the good plumbers have gone to South Africa. The good plumbers have gone to Botswana. Those that are there, it's either they can't get out or they are very dedicated. Because the ordinary person who's not in politics or in media like me will be like, I'm looking for a way out to go and find a better place to live. So you are very important. And there are a lot of things, since you was asking about whether you can put something together to come. In fact, do it. He was these politicians must actually take advantage of what you must say to them, let's do it. Let's give those people rice. Yeah. I have heard an argument for years with Dr. Moyo. I said to Dr. Moyo, Ngosana Moyo, I said, your utopian way of looking at politics of saying this is wrong will not work. You need to do something that works. Then you correct what is wrong when you are in power. You can't try to correct what is wrong when you don't have the power to do so. How do you do that? So if it means Chibaya needs rice to give to his MPs, please assist him with the rice. So that rice will be taken there. I'm telling you this. I go every Friday, I go to the village. I live in the village every weekend. And the amount of time I've spent educating people in my village, if any one of my fellow villagers was here, they can tell you today how many central hospitals are in Zimbabwe, how much they need. I've done that education in order for them to understand. And in order for them to understand, once they understand, they are able to have something to fight for. To say, I need to fight for this. Because I'm able to say to them, ZANU-PF politicians are stealing $150 million US every month from gold alone. And that evidence, I'm giving it to them from a government newspaper to say it is confirmed by that government. And I'm then able to say to them, these 6 central hospitals in Zimbabwe, Mpilo, UBH, Nguchen, Harare, Parinyato, and Chitungwiza need only $50 million a year. So I'm able to demonstrate to the villager without complicating their life, saying to them, you see, what is being stolen in 1 month can run these hospitals for 3 years. And now they become angry because they've gone to the clinic, there's no medication, and I've explained to them that the money is there, but it's being looted. You know, so I think politicians, you need to focus more on that, because a lot of the politicians, since we're talking we're Zimbabweans here, we're family, a lot of the politicians are riding on Nelson's popularity.
Yeah.
So they need to go to the ground and educate people. This man, his wife is a doctor in South Africa. They had a good life in South Africa. He sacrificed, he came back. He set a practice, a law practice, Unga, spelled with a W, just in case.
Yeah.
and those initiatives, they go a long way. So the diaspora is key in making sure that those that have gone there are then supported in these projects that we're talking about. I'll share with you a story before I go into the politics of elections and what the region and the continent can do. In 2019, I went to Nottingham, and I was invited by a friend of mine. My brother was now used to live in Nottingham. So I went there, and I was with a friend of mine. He was chatting up a lady, a Zimbabwean lady who's a doctor at one of the hospitals in Nottingham. So she was finishing at 6, so we said, let's just walk around. So he said, let's go to the pub. I said, you can't do that. Let's just find time. Things. No, this is my friend. So anyway, we walked into the townhouse at Nottingham City Townhouse in England. We walked into there, and we had noticed that it's twinned with the Harare. They had an arrow pointing towards Harare. So we went in there. We said, "Oh, we've seen that our capital city is twinned with your city. We just want to meet and talk to the person who does the twinning to find out whether the arrangement is still in place." You know, and because it was done in 1985, they pretend 1985. So they said, okay, no, that's fine, you can come in. And so we waited there. And then said, okay, what's your name? Write your name. So we wrote our names. And so she came back laughing. And she said, oh, I'm sorry, I have to be honest with you. I Googled all your names, and you are a famous journalist. So the mayor wants to see you. You're not going to see the person who does the tweeting. The mayor wants to see you. So we went in there. So we started talking. I explained the problems facing the city. And then he said, a lot of the other things that I can help you sit with, I need to sit with a caucus, and then we can agree on what we can do. But from the top of my head, and I don't need authority to do this, as the mayor, we commission our ambulances for 5 years and our fire engines for 5 years. So we are actually in the process of disposing them and taking them to the auction. When we auction them, the money goes to charities. So the situation you have explained to me of Harare, it's a charity case. So we are going to assist you. We'll give you 10 fire engines and 10 ambulances. And so we discussed, and then he said, but you need to sign confirming that you won't sell these things when they get there. You'll use them until they run into the ground. And I said, unfortunately, Your Worship, I can't do that because I'm not a member of the political party that's running the city. I'm only a friend of the leaders who are running that political party. So with your permission, can I call them so that you can talk to them. And he said, okay, that's fine. I called Advocate Chamisa, you know the story. I told you the story. I called Advocate Chamisa, and I explained to him. Then he said, no, more than 12. And I said, yes. Then he said, no, we need to get them. How do we get them to an area? And I said, no, we'll talk about that later, but we need to sort out the issue. Then he said, you can sign. And I said, no, I can't. But someone from the council needs to sign. When we started that process with Advocate Chamisa, it stopped. Those guys never came to Zimbabwe. Because it was the opposition that was going to bring these things. And this is what I always say to my brothers here, we need to explain to the citizens why the cities are failing to deliver service. Because this is not what opposition had. They blocked those things. And so many things before and after that have been blocked. But if you guys as the diaspora are able to form a strong, formidable platform for the diaspora, that government will not be able to do that. To say the diaspora has brought this and government around, you can go straight to Mobilization. We couldn't do that with the ambulances because then the fight with Douglas started and it just went out haywire. So the important thing now is to win an election. But we know from what the two gentlemen have said that the situation at the moment will not deliver a free and fair election. But as you heard Advocate Chamisa say at Alex Magayasa's memorial, I and Alex fought him because he didn't want to participate, as he explained. But we said any space that is up for grabs must be fought regardless of the circumstances. Because dictatorships are used to a particular way of doing things. They want to arrest this man. They are not yet done with him. Because they throw things at him, There are certain things that they even do that we don't even tell him because we say we don't want to because you mess up someone, so we keep quiet. So what do we do then? There is a region, there's SADC. SADC, you all know that it has let us down. But what needs to be done now is to go to SADC one by one. I've been doing that as a citizen, but using my leverage as a journalist, harassing those politicians in SADC. Until South Africa, they came to a space hosted by you guys. And I brought the head of diplomacy. I said, you must come and speak and answer the people. Zimbabweans are going to today, they've got questions for you. And you know how problematic the issue of sanctions has been. But on your CCC diaspora space, for the first time, South Africa acknowledged that sanctions are not the problem in Zimbabwe. And he said, you can quote me. They are not the problem in Zimbabwe, and it's not our government policy. This is a SADC policy. He said, and again, it shows that you created this platform. I just brought this guy. It's the power of the diaspora. If you guys had not done that space, maybe we wouldn't have known where they stood. But he said it. And the biggest problem that we face, that these two gentlemen face in terms of the law, is that ZANU uses lawfare. Job Scala is in prison today. Godfrey is in prison today, story. The Natime is 69 in prison today. It's using lawfare. It's targeting pillars that they think are around Chamisa, removing them. Basunge, Chakre, Mosha, and so forth. And we need to go to the region and say, we cannot hold an election under these circumstances whilst you guys just stand aside and watch. Because how do you hold an election when people are being locked up by one of the competitors? It does not make sense. They've got what's called the Private Voluntary Organization PVO Act bill, the amendment bill. It's meant to go after civil society. But that piece of legislation, I don't know if you've noticed it, it's exactly similar. You can go and check, he's a lawyer. It's exactly similar to the 1978 Affected Organizations Act of South Africa, apartheid South Africa. Zimbabwe is taking laws from the apartheid era and cleaning them up. Because of what these two guys were saying. They know they are going to lose the election. That's why they are desperate like this. I like actually to deal with the desperate person because they show you that they are in a panic mode. You know, when someone is just quiet, you are not sure about what they're planning. But ZANU-PF is so desperate that on the 25th of October, they will do their sanctions march. But for that thing to be accepted as a sanctions day, they had to pay people in the region. We actually know them. Who was paid, how much when? We know within the region because it's a corrupt cabal. But there's a bit of light because we have Hichilema, and Hichilema this week said, Sadak, we should not accept people who come into power through violence. And those are the elements that we need to focus on to say, okay, how do we do? Now, you guys in the diaspora, you have power because you can lobby these embassies here, Zambian embassy. Go to the South African embassy and lobby them. They will listen to you. The problem is, as the diaspora, you've been thinking that you don't have this power. You actually have that power. To go and say, my position on sanctions has always been clear. I don't like them, but I don't like them for the same reason as ZANU-PF. I don't like them because they don't work. They haven't worked because if they worked, ZANU-PF would have gone. In fact, the people that love sanctions the most is ZANU-PF. Because they use that as an excuse to explain their failures and their looting of public funds. Everything sanctions, everything sanctions. Sanctions, it's never 37,000, but you're driving a 400,000 car. How can that be sanctions? And we need to take those arguments to them. Now, the reason why I was so happy to come when Tafazwa got in touch with me, I said, you know, whether it's going to be 5 people or 10 or 20, I multiply that by 100. Because each one of you touches 100 lives in Zimbabwe. The money that you send, it touches 100 people in Zimbabwe per person. And it's important for you to use that leverage, as Pastor Ivan was saying, not to punish people. Although, of course, I've been a bit on the extreme sometimes when I get frustrated to say, don't give them the money. No, give them the money, but it comes. A lot of people write to me, let us say, why would I not register? When I say, no, what you do is wait for a moment when you are not supposed to send money to them, when they don't expect it, and say to them, now $50, but in there to register voter first. Can ochida auto register and send the slip. And they will do that. Even I've gotten to a point, I'm sure some of you have seen it. I've gotten to a point where I've done things that I know nothing about. I said, okay, let me go to Glenora and talk to young people where I grew up. I said, what are we getting wrong? Then they say, the way you guys talk to us, and what, you know, it's not the music. So I took my friend Changra and Kwashi. I said, Changra, I want to do a rap song. So I did Demlut to explain corruption to them. And then I did another rap song. I took a DNA track for voter registration. And when I did Demlut, it surprised me because it was the collective views were over 1 million. And it was on CNN, it was on Channel 4 News in England. In Zimbabwe, journalists is now using music to talk about corruption, you know. And those are the things that we need to use to get to them. Because that's the language they understand. And sometimes, you know, I ask myself that when I was 18, was I really bothered about voting? The answer is no, I wasn't bothered about voting. But there was no crisis at that time. But now there's a crisis. But if we done as parents enough to educate them, giving them political consciousness, the answer is no. We haven't done that. Only people like Tafas Wakakura, Al Mubama's no garage town or everything. But the average person doesn't know that. So we have to focus on those things. But the diaspora, you must use your power and demand your vote. You must use your power to lobby these embassies. To say, you know, if a Zambian ambassador in DC and in London and in Nigeria and in South Africa, they're all sending reports with my Zimbabweans are only some voter. And you have a legitimate reason to go there because they are SADC countries and we are part of SADC. So we need to do that. I'm sure you've seen a video where President Paul Kagame, when he was saying you don't buy your way out of this crisis in sanctions, you have to do something for your people. Let your people defend you. When outsiders come, your people will say, but what you're saying is not true because we are okay. Yeah, but we don't have that in Zimbabwe. And so it's important. We are not going to expect, and we shouldn't expect a lot from SADC and the African Union, but we need to use their platforms. Because when Honorable Shba and Honorable Molokele go after the rigging of the election, when they go to African Union, they will say, but did you talk to us before this? If they go to SADC, they will say, did you talk to us before this? So a lot of Zimbabweans are despondent online. They say, SADC in a basa. It's like having a father-in-law who's very nasty to you. When your wife has given birth, regardless of the behavior of the father-in-law, the tradition requires that you inform the father-in-law. To those right here. When your father dies, you need to go and inform the father-in-law. You know, some elders don't actually understand some of these traditions. That even when a father-in-law loses a son-in-law, we were laughing when Alex Magaisa died. His father-in-law was like, so it's a tradition that they have to walk through SADC. Right now, if you guys are putting pressure on this, and they will have something to use to say, look, our citizens are demanding this vote. Look, our citizens are complaining about this. Now, my final point is the issue of money. I can never, I don't know how to put it, but these guys don't have money. And they must be honest with you and tell you that they don't have money.
You cannot overemphasize.
They don't have money. Yeah. But I can tell you that in order for a seat to be won, what is needed will shock you. It's not much in terms of the things that Tito was talking about there. If he can deliver a truck of rice, it means ZANU-PF has been beaten on that front. If he can go to those areas and give, you know, I think most of you know about this already. If you go to Musha, the elderly, whether it's Matebele land or whether it's Manika land, or they want painkillers. Everyone, those elderly people, they want painkillers. Painkillers are so cheap but they are not available in clinics. It's the basic things that they can't find. Bandages. You know, Doc was talking about masks. It's those basic things that they require. In the diaspora, I believe that if Nelson Chamisa is going to win, he can only win because of the diaspora. If the diaspora does not do something, it will be difficult for Nelson Chamisa and Triple C to win. The diaspora must understand and shoulder that burden of winning that election. I want to tell you the truth. If you guys in the diaspora in America, South Africa, all these other countries, don't come to the party is not going to happen. And when the party does not happen, as I always explain to people on social media, that you say, a person living in New York looking after 10 people back home, over 20 years, would have spent enough to buy a home in Zimbabwe. So you guys, you are actually losing money through sending money to us. Is it then not better to just suffer once on this election and deliver victory and make sure that you don't have to be sending money all the time?
Open comments and questions for the panelists. Yes, over there.
Thank you so much. I really was there to say something. Thank you, Hopewell, and thank you, our leaders from Harare, Honorable Zimbabwe, Honorable Molokele. The last statement that Hopewell just said, we had a church conference last week in Malvern, near Philadelphia, where I said, are you not tired of sending money through Western Union to Zimbabwe? I hear people saying we don't do politics. But there's this saying which says if you don't do politics, politics will do you. As long as we don't participate, as long as we stay on the terraces, we will continue to send money to Zimbabwe through money grounds, through Western Union, like what our just said. I wanted to comment on what our guests said about women in what Comfort Dr. Molokele said about women. Women's participation. We'll start from this room. How many of you got your wives?
Yeah.
How many of you got your wives? That's where we start from. Zimbabwe, we come from a patriarchal society where we say these things are just for men, like what my grandmother said. And these things are just for women. And as long as we don't change that mindset, or go back to the passion that the people had in the Second War, the Second Warfare, whereby everybody within the family participated. The mother cooked for an unkoma. Baba did what he did and let his cows slaughtered and everything. The boy child was a Mujiba. The girl child was a Chimbido, although they were accused Muslim, which is where I'm trying to get to. As Zimbabweans, we should just go back there. That kind of passion, that everybody within a household is participating. About the women's participation, we have to go back to the culture that ZANU-PF have brought into Zimbabwe. The culture of financial vigor, disrespect. Our aunties and sisters were abused during the war. What did we do about it after the war? Brothers and uncles would be sent to go and get their sisters, their aunties, and bring them to the
posture.
To the posture. Your own sister, your own auntie, your own, and you take them. Why? Because of the fear of the gun. So there's a fear factor. What can we do about it? And that culture went on through independence up to now. Because when I look at Chef has said this must happen. Chef has said this must happen. And this is to answer comfort. What also affected even the Mary thing, the regular thing, is Chef parties are that Chef quality that as long as we continue with this Chef culture, we are going nowhere. Even us, me and Triple C, as Triple C or as the opposition, as long as we encourage this Chef culture, this chef and the chef and the chef,
Yeah.
as far as women are concerned, the abuse of girls, it goes back to this what I'm talking about. It was kind of sanctified or allowed during the war, and it carried on like that. Nobody said anything, nobody complained. After the war, nothing was done. No truth and reconciliation in Zimbabwe. Up to now, we will know better. The Second World War, we have victims who are still being compensated now, who were sexually abused during the Second World War. What is Zimbabwe doing about it? What is Southern Africa doing about the wars in Southern Africa? What are we doing about it as Africa? Nothing. Silence. And suddenly we think women will come out powerful. It will not happen. It has to start from within our families. Respect for each other, respect for our sisters, respect for our mothers. Having said so, I will be speaking to fellow women here. Wherever you go, Mushamukans. Mushamukans. Let's not stay on the terraces. If we stay on the terraces, it will be done. So let's just rise up, women. Let's rise up, women of Zimbabwe. Rise up and do what we were created to do. Make things happen. I think this is my contribution. Thank you.
Do you want to speak to that, especially the two MPs? That's a contribution. Any other comment? Yes.
I want to say that thank you very much for that important intervention. I just want to share a little piece of information. I happen to share the same lawyer with Mary, and what my judge was saying was that I feel let down by women, I feel let down by spouses. Because she said, Mantetwa has represented Mary, and I can tell you, I can put this as a matter of public record. She has not been paid a penny, because Mantetwa said, if we look at Mary as ZANU-PF, our value accounts are not access to Mariana. If we look at Mary as ZANU-PF, then we are as evil as ZANU-PF. Yes. Because tomorrow we will get into power, our party gets into power, we will do the same thing. And she said the best way for me as British that I saw fit was to teach Mary love. By saying all those bad things you did, this is how you were supposed to have treated people around you. So it's important for us as well that I think as Brian Gaboro said 2 days ago that sometimes we end up behaving like the animals that we are fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So today I saw a post here, I said I still went there, and I deliberately went there because I want to teach young people. I said, happy birthday. You know, it's unfortunate that you're spending this birthday away from home. We should not treat each other like that. So the bitterness that our people carry does not allow them to say, okay, this is Zimbabwe, it's his birthday, let's say happy birthday. And it's even worse when you are dealing with a woman. When people want to deal with women when they are beaten on the intellectual argument, I don't know so we need to deal with that, and you are correct to say, even in the churches, I remember even Advocate Chamisa telling me in 2016, he said to me, I'm so worried about what's happening because even our supporters will run away. For them to get a letter from another influential Zimbabwe, you was telling me these stories in 2016, and you were saying, we should not be treating our people like this. So what you've said is important, and to comfort, so if you don't do politics, doesn't work. Everything is political. It's politics. So you have to do that because this struggle that these two gentlemen are pushing at the moment, it's a struggle that will enable the rights of women to be asserted. So you need to understand that it's about politics. Then if Triple C gets into power in 2023, which I think it should and will, then you can hold them to account.
What you were saying, comfort, as I was saying, is directly related to women refraining from participating. They have to deal with all of these other issues. And it's a point that really is to be taken into account by the people that are decision makers now and will be decision makers later on. Yes, sir.
I want to follow up on what Hon Molokele mentioned. You referenced Zambia as an example of change that happened. And I understand that there is a lot of inspiration that we can get from Zambia. But my question was, is Zimbabwe similarly situated as Zambia? Especially if we consider the role of the military in Zimbabwe. If you consider 2017 and 2008, most of the encumbrances to change have been in the military. And it's something that maybe I'm being short-sighted, but it's something that Zambia does not have. So in not considering the role that the military has in Zimbabwe, are we being honest with ourselves in regards to change in Zimbabwe? That's the first point. And the second point that I wanted to ask is regarding the position that the CCC has on funds. Here I've been observing on funds.
Funding.
Okay. I understand that there were several.
Is it funding or funds?
Funding, sorry.
Funding.
I observed several GoFundMe accounts where you can contribute and everything. But this is from several people that have spoken to the diaspora. Towards the end, it becomes very tiring to follow several GoFundMe accounts. And you lose some of the GoFundMe accounts. Is it possible for the CCC to have a political action committee that has one account and everyone in the diaspora is follows?
Okay, just to answer you, Triple C has set up a global fundraising committee. It will be announced soon, which will allow us to coordinate the fundraising. It's true that there are a lot of them, and it's difficult to keep track, especially when it comes to accountability. So it's something that should be announced in due course. It took a process of getting the representatives from the diaspora because they wanted people with background, so it wasn't easy. But yes, there are other fundraising things, including membership subscription, all these things. They were stopped. I was also busy when I was appointed deputy treasurer. I was busy doing trainings for the commercial strategy of the brand. They stopped in January when they formed the Triple C, but we're about to relaunch again. The Triple C has got enough funding, even in Zimbabwe, in terms of membership subscription on its own. So we want to get the membership subscription at a street level, at a village level. We have village champions, street champions. So that's the direction we are going. And we are able to fund the struggle, even at $1 per month subscription, we can afford it as Zimbabwe. So we're going in that direction. So we thank those who have been coming up with fundraising initiatives, and we encourage them to continue. But as a party, we'll definitely do something soon in public, and we'll announce it to everyone so that people can see, including the use of the websites and everything, the PayPals of this world. So something is about to happen. With regards to your earlier point, I know in my earlier submissions, I didn't emphasize a lot the military foundation of our politics. There is no dichotomy between military and politics in Zimbabwe. I remember as a child, I grew up thinking that Tongogara was a soldier. That was the impression that I got. But as an adult, I've read a lot of books, and I actually realized that Tongogara was a politician. He wasn't a soldier. But the political process of the country became militarized because Zambia and Malawi became independent in 1964. And in 1965, Ian Smith and others did what? The UDI. So we're forced to have what? A military version. So people like Tongogara, who were politicians, became militarized. So by the time he died, it was no longer clear whether he's a politician or a soldier. But the truth is Tongogara is a politician. That's what he was. Who became militarized in response to the resistance from Smith. So after independence, we have that problem where politicians are military, military is politician. So the foundation of the political state of Zimbabwe is very military. And it's a key factor in our elections. I know in previous elections, the army leaders of the country once did a press conference and said, even if Morgan Tsvangirai wins the popular vote, we will not salute him because he didn't go to war like us. That was a clear attempted coup and intimidation of the electorate. And in 2008, we all know that the army was involved in the first coup of the country when Tsvangirai won the elections. And then in 2017, they were also involved in the second coup. So they could be involved in the third coup next year. So they are a key factor, and that's another area of engagement for us as the opposition. So it's a very important factor. But the main comparison between Zimbabwe and Zambia is not at the specifics. It's on the broad. Because I went to Zambia before the election, so I know the mood of the country. HH could not be allowed to even move from point A to point B. Roadblocks around it. There were some parts of Zambia where he did not even get to there during his campaign. The media was the state media was totally anti-HH. So you had to depend on a few pockets of private media. So there were a lot of comparison in terms of the electoral environment. There was a lot of violence also and intimidation. So there was a lot, but the people of Zambia said, we can go beyond this. They used the principle that we have heard of recently, the Mango principle. A lot of them said, yes, Lungu can do what he wants, but we will meet him on election day. And on election day, they surprised him. So we will learn that from Zambia. Zimbabwe and Zambia don't have a similar political history. But the bottom line is that we can learn some things, we can apply some things, but we cannot expect it to copy and paste Zambia and Zimbabwe. We have to accept that in terms of specificity, we are not the same. Neither are we the same with Malawi. So we have to accept that. So it's not like I'm saying copy and paste Zambia, no. I'm saying in the broader sense that we can unite as a country and change government, just like Zambians and Malawians are doing. We can do that. I know some of you throughout your life, you've experienced one ruling party, and you now assume it's normal that there should be one ruling party. It's not true. You can change the ruling parties as much as you want, just like they do here in America, just like they do in Zambia, just like they do in UK. Anytime you can be told it's now Labour, it's now Conservative, it's now Democrat. We can do that also in Zimbabwe. It's not impossible. But we have to start somewhere. So next year is an opportunity. The word opportunity is very simple. It means that it's a chance. You might not take it, you might take it. So opportunity means you have a chance. So let's see whether Zimbabwe will take the opportunity. I actually tell people, can you imagine what will happen if ED gets another 5 years? Because they will become even more bold and more hardened. We are being led by a cartel of criminals. So after the election, they will say, even Jesus himself will find us still in power. So we are now going to be the permanent ruling part of the country. That means the corruption, the cronyism, the looting will go from bad to worse. So we are trying to prevent a national catastrophe. South Africans are worried about Zimbabweans today. They are joking, if ZANU-PF gets another 5 years, there will be an increase of the migrants from Zimbabwe to South Africa several times over, because everyone would have given up on the future of the country. Even you in the States here, your relatives are coming your way. The moment the results are announced, it has 5 more years. And this victory says 2030 leadership. It means you will have pressure also. Your Teswaras and your Tetes, your uncles will be on their way to New Jersey. It's something that you should also prevent now. In medical science, they say prevention is better than cure. So start now to avoid having that pressure next year. Because if ZANU-PF remains in power, I can assure you, it's coming your way. Your relatives are coming to America.
Yes. Yes. Go ahead. Let you go ahead. You go ahead. Where you go ahead?
Okay. Thank you, Manuel. I just have a couple of questions. So the first one is CCC. Sometimes it appears as if we are being drowned, kind of losing this propaganda war against ZANU-PF. So ZANU-PF is a very old propaganda machines, you know. I wonder what's being done in terms of communication, because you hear lately there's been talk of structures. So this talk of, you know, structures or lack of structures, it's kind of, you know, if I'm looking as a potential voter, I don't know if this is something that should be paid attention to. This is vote air, this is noise, is this divide and conquer? So I have a question about the communication strategy on the part of CCC in terms of propaganda. Then the second question is, as a diaspora, I think one of the challenges of engaging, like, you know, family and friends back home is sometimes we face backlash or antagonists, you know, so to speak, like, oh, you're sipping your coffee in New York City, you know, we are on the ground. So what strategies can we employ? I know that we talked about sending money and sending messages with the money, but there's need of an ongoing conversation, not just to register to vote, but to also, you know, how to vote, for example, or why it's important to vote, and how to encourage people who are despondent. So what are some of the strategies that you have in terms of engaging people continuously? So thank you.
Sorry about that. Yeah, just to answer in a bit. First on the propaganda. This is the position about the Triple C. The Triple C is actually a new party. It's not a relaunched MDC. It's actually starting from zero. So in January when it was launched, there was a crisis of vacuum. So legally speaking, Triple C has never elected a leader. So it does not have structures because of that. But Triple C has an interim leadership. So some of the previous structures that were there in the MDC Alliance are being maintained so that we go to the stage where we'll have what? The elected leadership. So you will call him the organizer because he was the organizer before Triple C was launched. So he is an interim to respect the fact that he has not been elected. So he is the what? The interim organizer. So ZANU-PF knows that. The people on the ground know that. We're busy with Mkwazo right now, everyone knows. So if you're on Twitter, you will think people don't know. In Unga, people know that we have structures. But it's a desperate act also. The reason why ZANU-PF is making a lot of noise is because they are feeling the heat. Their assumption was when Triple C is formed, it is going to call for a Congress. And then they will pay people to campaign to get positions in the party and divide the party. So our president is learned from previous experience that if you are building a party, you don't start from the top. You start from the what? From the ground. I can give you an example. In 1995, when the Forum Party was formed, how were the party structures set up? Top intellectuals met in a hotel and allocated each other position. But did the party lift itself up? No. The president is Chief Justice, former Chief Justice Tumbuchena, all the people, educated people. So the party should come from where? From the ground. So it needs time to start from the ground. So we're not going to elect a leadership this year. It's not going to happen as far as I know. Maybe after the elections next year. So we actually have structures. We are not confused. But we are not having elected structures. We have interim structures. Yeah. And then the propaganda war, communications department, they are doing their best. But the border race is not on what ZANU-PF is trying to do. It's on the ground. That's why they are losing the battle. And we cannot go to the Facebook and Twitter and post about it. So now we should just be on the ground, street champions, village champions of Kwazo. If Kwazo works out the way it's supposed to work, we will see a different Triple C next year. And that's where we are more focused on the ground. Even they lost by-elections in Bulilima recently. It's a sign that Triple C has stopped being what? Social media, virtual media. Triple C is now what? Kwaso. It's now on the ground. It doesn't need to have structures that they want because they will hijack them and use them to their advantage. But I'll leave the rest to Honorable Chibai.
I wanted to say this.
Doctor, maybe just to help each other, I think this workshop,
Yes, there.
so, yeah, you can proceed.
This is an open workshop that has to deal with the human rights and democracy in Zimbabwe.
Yes.
For next
Coming to see.
for free and fair elections next year. When it comes to party structures and politics of the party and so on, we have a meeting specifically for that tomorrow.
Exactly.
Right? But we are done with the demonstration and everything else. So we're having here before we start. So I mean, where all these issues will be there. We just want to make sure that because this is a public meeting that is being broadcast everywhere. People are not really into the idea of party structures and all of that. That's coming tomorrow. So if your person is about that, save it for tomorrow.
That's true.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Also, yes. Are you saving it for tomorrow or what? No? You would ask me something? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
So I'm just going to change the format a little bit because we have to end. I'm going to let Charlie ask a question, and I'm going to let Kennedy ask a question, and we'll end and take a break for now because I think we've gone on for a long time in the day. I will let him do that, and also if I can, you may also maybe just speak on the political violence on Biwa and all the other others that have been on as a conclusion to that. Our panelists are available and we can always continue the conversation, but I just want to give time to everybody to just kind of take a break and to come back and reconvene for that. So we'll start with, and I'm sorry that I have to cut you off like this, but it has been a long day and I want to give our panelists.
So they can ask, right?
Yeah, so Charlie will ask a question, then Kennedy will kind of give a last question and also talk about the things, and then we take a break.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, somebody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
My son.
And Campbell, thank you so much. I want to thank Hopewell on the part he mentioned about feeling of civil violence. I experienced that in 2008. So I'm going to pass a comment and then ask a question. So my comment is 2008. Civil violence was twinned with fake facts. And then I was working with a public NGO at that time, and I was assigned to do the quotations of the Mbare flats. If you remember the story of the Mbare flats, we were given money for those two flats. And they said, we are going to finish this one. And later on, we'll give you money for other cases. I was assigned to do the quotation. I did the quotations, and people came from Fenton. They brought the money. That's the money you all know that Ignatius Togo paid the money of those plans. So, ZAPF is capable of doing that. My question is, we can still get donations out here and support our politicians who are in Zimbabwe. I don't like the idea of waiting until they are in power
while these people are suffering. Let's gather what we can do. Let's support them. They should go in Zimbabwe, where there are plenty of people, where there are Zimbabweans. In this case, we don't have, there's nobody who is the Zambian president. Everyone is Zimbabwe. If anyone is going to a hospital, whether you support Zambia, you still need the same predicament. So what should we do here? We should start acting like never before by coming up with resources and support. Trust me, believe me or not, out here we can get things, we can get wheelchairs, we can get drugs, we can get whatever we want, and take it to Zimbabwe. But most of us, we say we want to start doing it when we get into power. But by the time we get into power, our relatives have died. So why would we get into power? Why should we wait until it is too late? Let's do that. Now my question is, what can we do so that when we get these things, they will get to people? We should come up with something so that when we bring these resources, they will definitely go to Zimbabwe. I still remember in 2008, Professor Molokele, I think, whatever, I know about that. He got names from South Africa, and they did not allow him to go to Zimbabwe, and it was such a benefit. Yeah, sure. For a long time, we had to come in as Catholic NGO to persuade the government to allow that man to come into Zimbabwe. People were starving, but that man was there. But just because it was coming from Professor Molokele, they did not allow it to happen. So what can we do? All these people here, they know someone who does something, but they are frustrated that when they get something, it will not get to intended people in Zimbabwe. So let's come up with something to do that. Thank you so much.
I think it's important for the diaspora to get more organized, more structured, more coordinated, because behind the issue of contributions and donations is accountability and transparency. So if you are individuals, it's very difficult to account. And if ZANU-PF picks it up that people are not sure about you, they will run stories around you, and it will discourage more people from contributing, that you ate the money that was donated. So the party will have its own system of receiving support, but that will not be enough because the ZANU-PF people can predict and stop. So citizens, diasporans, in their own non-political structures, they can be able to do that. Because if you are a concerned citizen who wants to donate, for example, a chemotherapy, the one for dialysis, a dialysis machine, which is a practical donation, as citizens in Maryland or in New Jersey, you are able to bring that equipment. Working directly with the hospital. So you are able to do that. Because it's got nothing to do with CCC. It's got nothing to do with the political party. But you have to be organized, because every time someone collects money, we don't know whether they will use that money for the intended purpose. So if they are not in an institutional structure where we can track the payments, then we will not be able to have an income and expenditure statement. We are not able to audit. For example, when I was in South Africa about 12 years ago, I organized a fundraising for my primary school. In Unga there, I said, you need to come up with a committee to work with us in South Africa. And then I also said, you need to make sure that there's a treasurer. And then I said, you need to make sure there's a bank account so that we can send the money, not through MoneyGram, Western Union, but through the bank account, so that we can keep track of the donations. The guys in Unga couldn't open a bank account for various reasons, but when I went back to Unga, I tried to look for them. And then I discovered something very interesting. A lot of people in the diaspora for many years have been donating to us, to their schools. And one of the warnings that you are given is, if you've got a bank account, the diaspora will be hounding you every month for bank statement. It will be difficult for you. So people have learned that if you want to benefit from the diaspora, avoid things like bank accounts. So we couldn't support our school because we eventually said we can't be sending money to individuals to collect at Mkuru. Then they told the people in Unga that the money that came from South Africa is $100. And then on the ground, the money that works is $20. So accountability and transparency discouraged a lot of people from contributing. So we'll try as the CCC to have proper structures for funding for you to support us. But we also encourage you to come up with what? Your own structure as citizens that you can trust. Because Hopewell on his own here, he's able to raise $10,000 using a GoFundMe. But how sustainable is that? What if he's tempted to use part of the money? He's a good man. But what if he's tempted to use part of the money and then people catch it that he used part of the money? Then it becomes a story for everyone. In this in South Africa, the bishop called Reverend Allen Rusak, I don't know whether you know his story. He was a famous fundraiser for the anti-apartheid movement. He got disgraced because he was accused of diverting some of the money that people donated for democracy in South Africa. But the fact that he did it doesn't mean everyone else was doing that was doing it. But his story became what? The story. So if something happens to one person, then we'll lose the hope of the people. So let's balance that. But yes, the diaspora can do something. Anyway, I forgot to say happy birthday. It's actually Owen's birthday today. Happy birthday to you and congratulations. There is something I wanted to say about the diaspora. At law school, one of the things we were taught, the principle of legal practice is evidence. The principle of legal practice is what? Your clients will come with all sorts of stories. They even sit overnight and do a vigil. This is what we'll tell our lawyer. And plan. And with the whole important. But whatever they are telling you, don't listen to it. After they finish creating all the best stories they can come up with, I heard one of them saying she's a good storyteller. After they finish, you say, where is the what? Evidence. Without evidence, don't go anywhere. Stop. So I was once a student leader in Harare, and we went to our Minister of Education, Dr. Ignatius Chom, and we said to, as the SRC at the University of Zimbabwe, Dr. Chom, we want an appointment with you, and we were given the appointment. And Dr. Chom said, what can I help you with SRC? They said, I will say that the payout has not yet come. Our students are starving. Then Dr. Chom said, I know that the payout has not yet come. But if I go to the cabinet meeting next week and tell them that the students at UZ have not received their grants, their payout, I will not be taken seriously. They want evidence that the students at UZ are hungry. So he asked us to come back with evidence. So next week we came with thousands of students at Old Mutual House. We stopped going for lectures, we stopped going for tutorials. We're outside Old Mutual House. And everyone was looking around the window, making noise that we were hungry. And the next day, the Herald ZBC gave us the attention that the students at UZ are hungry. Then Dr. Chombo said, now I can go to cabinet and argue. Because that, if I say the students at UZ are hungry and you are all still at Complex 5 there, it doesn't help me. But if you are stuck at Africa Unit Square, then it makes sense. Even the MPs at Parliament can see. They are the UPAs and USAs. So you needed what? Evidence. The diaspora needs to create the evidence. For example, if you want the diaspora vote, who is in the diaspora wants to vote? We can't see you. 25 October is a good example. What is happening on 25 October? Does anyone know? International Anti-Scientist Day in Zimbabwe. Why can't you as the diaspora organize that in each and every what major town or city in the diaspora, both in SADC and in Europe and America? On 25 what? October, you do your demonstrations for the diaspora vote. So you will divert ZANU-PF from the sanctions, but you also bring attention. If you are doing a protest in New York or DC, in Gaborone, in Johannesburg or Pretoria, in Vindu, in Lusaka, because we have the structures much back. Yeah. If those in Zambia were 100, wait till my placards with the diaspora vote, on the same day that they are having what? International sanctions. That's when they will lose the momentum, because you as the diaspora will hijack the same platform. But you will bring the evidence that the diaspora wants to vote. We cannot go to Parliament there and argue and say diaspora wants to vote. Everyone will say, which diaspora? But if we have got videos and pictures of diasporians in Lusaka, in Maputo, in Lilongwe, in Pretoria, in Cape Town, and the consulate saying want to vote, then we are somewhere, we are starting. So I'm not giving you a clue, but I'm saying maybe that's the way forward.
No?
Just,
If you didn't have it, that's fine.
I have numerous questions, but I'm going to streamline them, just two.
One.
And I was supposed to give a presentation, but just a short one.
One.
Yeah, well,
But just one, yeah, one will do.
2 minutes.
In less than 5 minutes, right?
In 5 minutes? No.
Yeah, okay.
30 seconds.
2 minutes. 2 minutes. Thank you very much, Wachbaya. I know you don't remember me, but first time I saw you, I was a student, UZ, and you had been arrested well, and I was a student, but hot. So you walked in, and I was like, hey, so speaking to you now. But my question basically was to my fellow colleague in the human rights arena, women's rights. I really appreciate what you're doing, defending and advocating for women's rights. And I wanted to know, through your organization, are you also going probably to, to speak to the rights of women, of human rights defenders? For example, Maitama, who has been, in the wilderness for the past 6 years right now. We don't even know how she's surviving. Bicycle, right now she was arrested, and of course, through the donations and crowdfunding, thanks to that. But we need something sustainable because these things are going to continue happening, and women are going to be the ones suffering. Women and children of human rights defenders are the ones who are going to continue suffering. So I just wanted to pick your mind on that if you do have something in the pipeline. And the other one was basically going to be a question on, probably I'll just leave that on strategy. But it's an issue about international advocacy for the party. Hopewell talked about the idea of taking from the playbook, apathy. But if you read back, you see that the Thabo Mbeki and Mandela were so effective on international advocacy. They literally, knocked on doors of many African countries and European countries and so forth. Do we have that robust, approach coming? Specifically, the question is, will you see our chief champion coming to America very soon to address us, or to even, champion that advocacy so that we can be rallied here in the United States? And as you say, the Honorable Molokele, we need to structure ourselves effectively here in the diaspora. There's nothing that stops us from demonstrating literally every day in every embassy here. But the thing is that, here in the United States and probably even in the UK, people are just scattered all over. And we're literally economic refugees. So people, we have excuses. We don't want those excuses. We want probably to organize ourselves and basically have something robust coming in terms of international strategy. But now...
He's not going to stop. So his first question regarding the human rights, I'll let Ms. Comfort answer. And then the role of the international, I'll let Mr. Hopewell. That is it, ladies and gentlemen. We have to move on to the next program. These panelists are available to us. That's a good thing about this program. So I'm going to let it end there so that we can give ourselves rest, give our panelists rest, and give our panelists time to interact more on a one-on-one level with you. Okay, all right.
My brother, thank you so much. It's very good to meet you. So as far as your question is concerned, I feel like I'm one of those people. I'm a butterfly. I operate a little bit on the quiet, in the back. We've been doing a lot of work. So I think you brought up Maitama, for example. You brought up Koma Job Sikala, and anything else that has happened around advocating for those kind of cases. Our foundation does we do contribute to that. As far as globally, our work has been, we've really been partnering with a lot of global rights women's groups as well as human rights groups. So I'll give you an example. I was I'm holding him in my heart today because I've been thinking a lot about him and just missing him. We've been doing a lot of strategy and talking behind on how we can collaborate around the intersectionality of human rights and women's rights. So I'm glad your question actually gets me reflecting a lot, because sometimes I think even as a woman, as an African woman, you're taught to be shrink yourself, don't brag a lot. But as I'm listening to you asking the questions, we've been doing a lot. One of the main things I'm working on right now is the global treaty on ending violence against women. So I am the only Zimbabwean woman who is participating in the global treaty on ending violence against women. And what that treaty does is just like the tobacco treaty. No matter where you get on a plane in the world, if you smoke on that plane, you're gonna get fined. I think it's $5,000 now. And we are trying to establish that same treaty at the UN level. So we have been working on, we are slowly getting there, but we've been collaborating. The second thing is I'm working right now with the Global Rights for Women, which is based in Minnesota. It's about 20 lawyers, and we've been trying to look at how can we do some work on the ground, to highlight that. And the third thing that we're working on is showcasing the president, which was banned in Zimbabwe. I'm working with PBS to be actually showcasing that documentary that was banned in Zimbabwe. And we're going around universities in my state in the Midwest and just showcasing to my American friends to see what's going on in Zimbabwe and how they can participate. So there's a lot that we've been doing around the intersectionality of women's rights. I just don't do with women's rights, but also women's rights are human rights. But thanks for your question. It gets me thinking a lot about also how we can continue to do that work more broader. Thank you.
What was the question? So it's 12 midnight, right? So or international advocacy. What was the question? Just repeat it quickly.
Well, I think basically it was the issue of going to honorable maybe are we going to see the president come to the United States?
Yeah. No. That's okay. It's important to do those things, and I totally agree with you. Because the story of apartheid, as you correctly put it, became a global phenomenon because the ANC itself had put a group of intellectuals that were going around the world talking about what was happening in South Africa. Because remember at that time they didn't have social media, so they had to go into universities, and you find a lot of young people in the West who were putting pressure on their governments to do something about it because South Africans themselves were using advocacy. As for President Chamisa, when you come, I'll leave it to this team.
Can I help? A few months ago, someone in top leadership for South Africa, because my wife is in Johannesburg, I go to Johannesburg once in a while. I had a dinner with some of the top leaders for the South Africa province. And he said to me, Honorable, when you go back to Zimbabwe, can you ask Honorable Advocate Chamisa to come to South Africa? We want him to come. So I said to him, I will take the message to you. And after I had an opportunity to talk to Advocate Chamisa, I said, I heard someone in South Africa in the province saying, they are specifically requesting you to come. The answer that I got is the answer that I will share with you. Advocate Chamisa said, Mkomatan, I can go to South Africa anytime, it's not an issue. But I have to go there with a clear agenda and purpose. And one of the things that he was worried about was how many people will come if I come there. Because it can be a propaganda disaster for me. If I go to Joburg, which people claim Mama and Zimbabweans are in Joburg, and then I come there, and this guy is saying, President Wawia, and I find 10 people there, it will make it difficult for me to come out of that situation. So go back to your brother and tell him something about me, that I'm more than willing to come anytime. But are they able to host me? So he took the message back to them. And I told him, look here, you have to mobilize. Make sure your structures are in place. Go to Alexander, go to Tembisa, go to Pretoria, go to Durban, go to Airport Elizabeth, so that once you send a date as a province, that advocate is coming on 12th October. You don't need to mobilize. You just phone everyone across, and everyone converges to the venue. And the people say, there is President Chamisa, and there are the Zimbabweans who want change in Zimbabwe. You can't go for 5 people in South Africa when there are millions. So it's very important for you to worry more about here, whether you are organized enough, you are prepared enough, so that if he comes, he doesn't become a public relations disaster for him, because now it will be used against him. That's what he told me. But the organizer is also here, so he might have a different answer.
Please assure the president that in the US and in Canada, he will have no such problem. Period.
Yes, and
No, the organizer is here, so he can answer us.
And I would add to that, if you're so confident of our impact as a diaspora, there's no problem that the president should feel. You know, if he knows that he's going to win and he will take it, then it shouldn't be a problem that where we stand. And it's North America, we are ready.
And that's also an issue that you deal with when we're dealing with structure.
That's why I said that this is a workshop, and I think some of the issues being raised here, I think for tomorrow's meeting, so I will not respond.
Right. Okay. Let's let me do this. I'm available, as the father said, for talking later on, and then take a break and so on. But the formal part of it is concluded right now. We want to do 2 things: to thank the panel for the contributions they made to the discussion that we're having. I think it's been very helpful in many ways. And I honestly think that the important thing that I got from their participation for us is the importance of the role we play in the diaspora as advocates for the struggle and the reform, and the importance they put in the kinds of things that we do here, and for assuring us that there is something that is positive and a good result that can come from it, and that's very important from our part. Many times I think that we do things and we never really tire, but we don't know whether they say they are not necessarily appreciation, but effectiveness of what happens at the level. They have told us, all of them, whether they're with us in CCC or as activists of one thing, that we have an important role to play in the struggle to liberate the country. And for that, I'm eternally grateful to you, and I will carry that message back to you to say they have told us to get going. We should. Thank you very much.